Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I've been a California Highway Patrol officer for about 14 years. For most of that time, I worked the night shift on Interstate 15 and state roads cutting through the Mojave Desert between Barstow and the Nevada border. My name is Aiden Roswell, and let me say this before you ask. I've heard every joke about my last name hundreds of times. My partner, Miguel Frazier, and I patrol a stretch of highway that most people only see when heading to Vegas or touring Death Valley. It's an incredibly desolate area. Flat basin bottoms, creosote bushes, distant mountains turning purple at dusk, Joshua trees, and flat roads stretching to the horizon. The work is straightforward. Speeders, breakdowns, the occasional DUI, and once in a while someone hauling something they shouldn't be hauling. We respond to accidents, check on stranded motorists, and make sure the trucks coming through from the ports aren't overweight or falling apart. It's steady work, and I like the quiet. The desert at night has a way of clearing your head. No city lights, no traffic noise, just wind and stars and the hum of the engine. Miguel came on as my partner 3 years ago after transferring from the Central Valley. He's younger than me by about 8 years, married with 2 kids, and he's the kind of guy who keeps his gear clean and his reports cleaner. We get along because we both understand that out here backup can be 40 minutes away on a good night. So you watch each other's backs and you don't take stupid risks. What I'm about to describe happened over the course of 3 weeks in October of last year. I've filed internal reports. Miguel filed his own. We spoke with a federal agent whose card I still have in my wallet, though I've never called the number on it. And we made a decision together about how we'd handle our shifts going forward. That decision cost us both some sleep and changed the way I look at the sky when I'm standing on the shoulder at 2 in the morning. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just telling you what happened. The first night was October 9th. We'd rolled out of the Barstow station just after 10 p.m. and headed north on I-15 toward Baker. The temperature had dropped into the low 50s, which felt cold after the triple-digit days we'd been dealing with in September. The sky was clear, no moon, and you could see the Milky Way laid out like a brushstroke. We'd made one traffic stop near Zizix Road, a sedan doing 95 in a 70. Warning issued, no drama. By midnight, we were cruising north past the Halloran Summit rest area, running quiet with just our running lights on. Miguel was driving. I had the passenger seat with the laptop angled toward me, scrolling through the incident log to see if anything had come in from the other units. There were 2 other patrols working our sector that night, one down near Yermo and another up by the state line. It was a Tuesday. Traffic was light. A few semis, a handful of cars, nothing unusual. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a vehicle pulled over on the northbound shoulder about a quarter mile ahead. But the light wasn't right. It wasn't headlights or taillights or hazards. It was a single point of white light, low to the ground, perfectly still. As we closed the distance, I expected it to resolve into something normal. A car with one working headlight, a reflector on a guardrail, a road crew sign. It didn't. Miguel slowed without me saying anything. He'd seen it too. "What is that?" he asked. "Don't know yet," I said. We came up on it at about 30 miles per hour. The light sat maybe 3 feet off the pavement, right on the white fog line at the edge of the shoulder. It was roughly the size of a basketball, perfectly round, and it gave off a steady white glow with no flicker. No heat shimmer around it. No shadow cast on the ground beneath it. It just hung there like someone had painted it onto the air. Miguel eased the patrol car to a stop about 50 feet short of it. We sat there with the engine idling, both of us staring. I've pulled over for plenty of strange things. Furniture in the road, a mattress, a ladder, even a refrigerator once. I've seen flares, glow sticks, and homemade road markers. This was none of that. "You want to approach?" Miguel asked. "Yeah," I said, "slow." He rolled forward. I kept my eyes on the light. It didn't move. It didn't pulse. It didn't react to us at all. When we got within 20 feet, I told him to stop again. I grabbed my mag light from the door pocket and stepped out. The desert night closed around me. No wind. No sound, except the faint tick of our engine cooling and the distant hum of a semi passing on the southbound side a mile away. I walked toward the light with my flashlight in my left hand and my right hand resting on my belt. Not on my sidearm, just loose and ready. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The light didn't behave like any light source I knew. It didn't spill onto the asphalt. It didn't illuminate the gravel on the shoulder. It was just a sphere of white, self-contained, with a hard edge you could see against the darkness. I stopped about 6 feet from it and raised my mag light. I aimed the beam directly at the sphere. The light from my flashlight hit it and stopped. Not reflected, not absorbed. It just stopped, like I was shining a beam at a wall that wasn't there. The sphere stayed exactly as bright as it had been. My light didn't add to it or change it in any way. I heard Miguel's door open behind me. He walked up and stood at my shoulder. "You seeing this?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. I took one step closer. The air around the sphere felt normal. No heat, no cold, no static charge. I reached out with my flashlight, planning to touch the sphere with the end of the mag light, not my hand. Before I made contact, the sphere moved. It didn't drift. It snapped sideways about 10 feet in the space of a blink, smooth and instant, and settled back into the same height above the shoulder. No acceleration, no trail. One moment it was in front of me. The next it was to my left. Miguel took a step back. I felt my pulse kick up. "Dispatch, this is 3 Adam 7, I said into my shoulder mic. "We've got an unknown light source on the northbound shoulder at milepost 242, requesting advice." The radio crackled. 3 Adam 7, can you describe the light source?" I looked at Miguel. He looked back at me with the same expression I probably had on my face. "It's approximately 3 feet off the ground. White, spherical, no visible power source. It's not a vehicle, not a flare. Unknown origin." There was a pause. 3 Adam 7, is it posing a traffic hazard?" "Negative. It's on the shoulder, but it just moved on its own." Another pause, longer this time. 3 Adam 7, can you set up cones and monitor until we can get a supervisor out there?" "Copy that," I said. Miguel went back to the car and pulled the cones from the trunk. We set up a short line to divert traffic away from the shoulder, though there was almost no traffic to divert. The whole time, the sphere just sat there, motionless again, glowing steady. We stood by the car and watched it. I checked my watch, 12:47 a.m. Miguel pulled out his phone and tried to take a picture. He held it up, framed the sphere in the shot, and tapped the screen. When he looked at the result, he showed it to me. The photo was black, not dark, not underexposed. Pure black, like he'd taken a picture of nothing. He tried again. Same result. "Camera's working fine," he said, pointing it at me and snapping a clear shot of my face lit by the glow of his screen. He turned it back toward the sphere. Black frame. I tried mine, same thing. The phone worked, the camera worked, but every time we pointed it at the light, the image came back empty. At 1:15 a.m., our supervisor, Sergeant Kellerman, rolled up in his unit with his light bar flashing. He stepped out, a broad-shouldered guy in his early 50s, with a gray flat top and the kind of no-nonsense expression that comes from 30 years on the job. He walked up to us, looked at the sphere, and stopped. "That's new," he said. "Yes, sir," I said. He approached it the same way I had, flashlight out, slow and cautious. He tried shining his light at it, same result, no interaction. He walked a slow circle around it, staying about 10 feet back. The sphere didn't move. When he came back to us, he pulled off his cap and scratched his head. "I don't know what that is," he said plainly, "but it's not causing a hazard, and I'm not going to have you boys standing out here all night staring at it. Mark it in the log, take some notes, and if it's still here in the morning, we'll deal with it then." "What if it moves again?" Miguel asked. "Then you follow it and call it in," Kellerman said. "But don't touch it. Don't approach within arm's reach. And if it does anything that looks like a threat, you back off and call for more units." "Yes, sir," we both said. Kellerman left. We stayed for another 20 minutes standing by the car, watching. The sphere didn't move. At 1:40, I made the call. "Let's clear," I said. "We've got the rest of the sector to cover." Miguel nodded. We pulled the cones, loaded them back in the trunk, and got in the car. As Miguel started the engine, I looked back at the sphere one more time. It was still there, glowing white and still against the black desert. We drove north. I kept checking the side mirror. The sphere shrank to a dot and then disappeared behind a low rise. When we crested the next hill, I looked back again. Gone. Just the empty highway and the long line of the shoulders stretching back toward Barstow. "You okay?" Miguel asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" "I don't know what we just saw. Neither do I." We didn't talk much for the rest of the shift. We made another stop near the state line, helped a stranded motorist with a flat tire, and rolled back into Barstow just before 6 a.m., as the sun started to turn the eastern sky pink. In the locker room, Miguel sat on the bench and stared at his boots for a long time. "You going to write it up?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" "Yeah." We both filed reports. I kept mine factual: location, time, description, actions taken. I didn't speculate. I didn't add any drama. I wrote it the way I'd write up a traffic stop. Miguel did the same. 3 days later, Kellerman called me into his office. There was a man in a dark suit sitting in the chair across from Kellerman's desk. The man stood when I came in and offered his hand. "Officer Roswell, I'm Agent Carver, FAA," he said. His handshake was firm but brief. "I wanted to ask you a few questions about the incident on the 9th. I sat. Carver asked me to walk him through it again. I did. He took notes in a small leather-bound notebook, the old-fashioned kind with a ribbon bookmark. When I finished, he asked if I'd noticed any aircraft in the area before or after seeing the light. I told him no. He asked if I'd experienced any dizziness, nausea, or disorientation. I told him no. He asked if the light had made any sound. I told him no. Then he asked me if I'd seen it again since that night. "No, sir," I said. He nodded, closed his notebook, and stood. "Thank you for your time, officer. If you see anything similar, please contact your supervisor immediately, and he'll forward it to us." "Can I ask what it was?" I said. Carver gave me a thin smile. "We're still looking into it." He left. Kellerman leaned back in his chair and sighed. "That's the third call I've gotten about lights on that stretch in the past year," he said. "None of them turn into anything. No follow-up, no explanation. Just guys in suits asking questions and then disappearing." "You think it's military?" I asked. I don't know, Kellerman said. And frankly, I don't care. What I care about is making sure my officers stay safe and do their jobs. So, if you see it again, you call it in, you keep your distance, and you let someone else figure out what it is. Understood? Yes, sir. I went back to work. Miguel and I didn't talk about it much after that. We'd bring it up once in a while on a quiet night, usually as a joke, but neither of us could laugh about it the way we wanted to. It sat in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't dig out. 2 weeks later, it happened again. October 23rd, another clear night, colder this time, down into the low 40s. Miguel and I were running south on State Route 127, the long, empty road that connects I-15 to Death Valley Junction. It's a lonely stretch. 2 lanes, no center line for most of it. Just faded asphalt running through open desert with mountains in the distance and nothing in between but sand, rock, and the occasional creosote bush. We'd been dispatched to check on a possible stranded vehicle reported by a passing trucker near the junction with Highway 178. By the time we got there, the vehicle was gone. Probably got a jump or a tow from a friend. We were heading back north toward Baker when Miguel saw it. "Aiden," he said, his voice flat. I looked up from the laptop. Ahead of us, maybe half a mile out, a white light sat in the middle of the road. Not on the shoulder, in the road. Dead center, right on the faded yellow line. Miguel slowed the car. My stomach dropped. "Same one?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, "but it looks the same." We crept forward. The light didn't move. As we got closer, I could see it was identical to the one we'd seen on I-15. Same size, same height off the ground, same steady white glow with no flicker or pulse. Miguel brought us to a stop about 100 feet short of it. We sat there with the engine idling. The light just hung there, motionless. "What do you want to do?" Miguel asked. "Call it in," I said. "Then we approach." I keyed the radio. "Dispatch 3 Adam 7. We have another unknown light source, this time on State Route 127, approximately 3 miles south of the Baker Junction. Requesting supervisor response. Copy 3 Adam 7. Supervisor is 30 minutes out. Do you need immediate assistance? Negative. We're standing by." I looked at Miguel. "Let's go check it." We stepped out. The night was cold enough that I could see my breath. The desert stretched flat and empty in every direction. No other vehicles, no lights, no sound except the faint whistle of wind across the open ground. We walked toward the light together, flashlights out. When we got within 20 feet, I stopped. Miguel stopped beside me. The light looked exactly as I remembered. A perfect sphere, self-contained, glowing with no visible source. "You want to try the light trick?" Miguel asked. I raised my mag light and aimed it at the sphere. The beam hit it and stopped cold, just like before. No penetration, no reflection. I lowered the flashlight and took 1 step closer. The sphere moved. It slid backward, away from us, about 15 feet in an instant. Still centered on the road, still the same height. It didn't bob or drift. It relocated, clean and precise, like someone had picked it up and set it down again. Miguel and I looked at each other. "It's reacting to us," he said. "Yeah." I took another step forward. The sphere slid back again. Same distance, same smooth instant motion. "It's keeping range," Miguel said. I stopped walking. The sphere stopped moving. We stood there for a long moment. Then Miguel did something I didn't expect. He walked to the side of the road, off the asphalt and onto the gravel shoulder. The sphere didn't move. He walked parallel to it, trying to get an angle. The sphere rotated in place, keeping itself oriented toward us. "It's tracking us," Miguel said quietly. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. This wasn't a drone. This wasn't a balloon. This was something responding to our position with intention. I keyed the radio again. Dispatch, 3 Adam 7. The light source is exhibiting movement. It's repositioning in response to our approach. Advise. There was a longer pause this time. 3 Adam 7, maintain safe distance and wait for supervisor. Copy. Miguel came back to the road. We walked backward slowly, keeping our eyes on the sphere. It didn't follow, it just sat there in the center of the lane, glowing. We got back to the patrol car and waited. I checked my watch. 2:17 a.m. The supervisor was still 20 minutes out. I pulled out my phone and tried to take a picture again. Same result. Black screen. This is insane, Miguel said. Yeah. What do you think it is? I have no idea. We sat in the car with the engine running and the heater on, watching the light through the windshield. It didn't move. It didn't change. It just existed, bright and impossible in the middle of an empty road in the Mojave Desert. At 2:34, the supervisor arrived. Not Kellerman this time. It was Sergeant Ortiz, a compact woman with sharp eyes and 20 years on the highway. She pulled up alongside us, got out, and walked over to my window. I rolled it down. "Show me," she said. I pointed. She looked. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. "Same as the one on I-15?" she asked. "Identical," I said. She walked toward it, flashlight in hand. Miguel and I got out and followed. When she got within range, the sphere slid backward, maintaining distance. Ortiz stopped and watched it. "Is it armed?" she asked. "Unknown," I said. "Has it shown any hostile behavior?" "No, ma'am. It just moves away when we approach." She keyed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Ortiz. I'm on scene with 3 Adam 7, confirming unknown aerial phenomenon, responsive to approach, non-threatening at this time. I'm requesting CHP air support and federal notification." "Copy, Sergeant. Air support is not available tonight. Federal contact has been initiated." Ortiz lowered her radio and looked at us. "We're going to set up a perimeter and wait for daylight. If it's still here when the sun comes up, maybe we'll see what we're actually dealing with." We pulled both patrol cars back about 200 feet and set up cones across both lanes to block any oncoming traffic, though we didn't see a single vehicle the entire time we were there. The 3 of us stood by the cars, drinking coffee from thermoses and watching the light. At 3:10 a.m., something changed. The sphere started to pulse. Not quickly, not erratically, a slow, steady rhythm. Bright, dim, bright, dim. Each cycle took about 3 seconds. "You seeing this?" Ortiz asked. "Yeah," I said. The pulsing continued for maybe 30 seconds. Then it stopped, and the sphere rose. It climbed straight up, smooth and silent, accelerating steadily. In less than 5 seconds, it was a pinpoint in the sky. And then it was gone. We stood there staring at nothing. The road was empty. The desert was dark. The wind picked up, pushing sand across the asphalt. "Get back in your car," Ortiz said quietly. "We're clearing the scene." We pulled the cones, loaded up, and drove back to Baker in convoy. None of us said a word on the radio. When we reached the junction with I-15, Ortiz pulled over and we pulled up beside her. She got out. We got out. "I'm going to file a report," she said. "You two do the same. Stick to facts. Don't speculate. Don't talk about this with anyone outside the chain of command. If Federal wants to interview you, you cooperate fully. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," we both said. She got back in her car and drove south. Miguel and I stood by our unit, watching her taillights fade. "You okay?" I asked. "No," Miguel said. I'm not. Me neither. We finished the shift in silence. When we got back to the station, Miguel went straight to his car without changing out of his uniform. I found him in the parking lot, sitting in the driver's seat with his hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. I knocked on his window. He rolled it down. "You want to talk?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "I need to think." He drove off. I went home, showered, and tried to sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sphere rising into the sky, smooth and impossible. The federal agent came back 2 days later. Same guy, Agent Carver. This time he interviewed Miguel and me separately. He asked the same questions he'd asked before, plus a few new ones. Had the light made any sound during the second encounter? No. Had we experienced any physical symptoms? No. Had we noticed any other unusual phenomena in the area? No. When he finished with me, he sat back in his chair and folded his hands. "Officer Roswell, I want to be straight with you," he said. "What you and Officer Fraser have witnessed falls into a category of events we take very seriously. I can't give you details about ongoing investigations, but I can tell you that you're not the first to report something like this in this area, and you probably won't be the last. My advice is simple. Continue doing your job. If you see it again, report it immediately. Do not approach closer than 50 feet. Do not attempt to interact with it, and do not discuss it publicly." "Is it dangerous?" I asked. "We don't know," Carver said. "But we'd rather you stay cautious." He stood and handed me a business card. "If anything else happens, call this number directly. Don't wait for dispatch to route it up the chain." I took the card. He left. Miguel and I compared notes that night over coffee at a diner in Barstow. We'd both gotten the same speech, the same card, the same non-answers. "You think it's ours?" Miguel asked. "Like military testing?" "I don't know," I said. "If it is, why are they sending federal agents to interview us? Maybe they're trying to see if we figured it out." "Maybe." We sat in silence for a while. The diner was almost empty. Just us, a trucker at the counter, and a waitress refilling ketchup bottles. "I don't want to see it again," Miguel said. "Yeah," I said, "me neither." But we did. November 4th, a Wednesday. Miguel and I were running our normal sector along I-15. The night was clear and cold, temperature in the mid-30s. We'd had a quiet shift. One speeding ticket, one welfare check on a pulled-over RV that turned out to be fine, just a driver taking a break. At 1:50 a.m., we were heading south past the Halloran summit when every light on the dashboard flickered. Not a quick blink. A slow dimming, like someone was turning down a rheostat. The headlights faded. The dash lights dropped to almost nothing. The radio spit static. The engine coughed once, stuttered, and died. Miguel guided us onto the shoulder with what momentum we had left. We rolled to a stop. The interior went dark except for the faint glow of the emergency dome light, which was running off the battery. "What the hell?" Miguel said. I tried the ignition. Nothing. Not even a click. The whole electrical system was dead. I keyed the radio. Static. I tried my handheld. Same thing. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not low signal. No signal at all, even though we were only a few miles from Baker, and I'd had full bars 2 minutes ago. Miguel tried his phone. Same thing. "This is bad," he said. I looked out the windshield. The highway stretched dark and empty in both directions. No other vehicles in sight. No lights on the horizon. Just the long black line of the road and the stars overhead. And then I saw it. A white glow rising over the ridgeline to the west. Not a light source. A glow like dawn coming from the wrong direction. It spread across the horizon, brightening, washing out the stars. "Miguel," I said quietly. He looked up. Oh no. The glow intensified. And then, cresting the ridge, 3 spheres appeared. Not the size we'd seen before, these were huge. Each one had to be at least 20 feet across, maybe more. They moved in formation, spaced evenly, drifting toward us in perfect silence. They glowed the same steady white, but brighter, bright enough to throw shadows across the desert floor. "Get out," I said. We bailed from the car and moved to the front bumper, putting the vehicle between us and the approaching lights. My heart hammered in my chest. My hands shook. I could feel Miguel beside me, breathing fast and shallow. The 3 spheres stopped about 200 feet from us, hovering maybe 30 feet off the ground. They hung there, motionless, arranged in a perfect triangle. The glow they gave off was so intense I had to squint. It didn't hurt to look at, but it was overwhelming, like staring at 3 small suns. I don't know how long we stood there. Seconds, maybe a minute. Time felt slippery. Then the middle sphere descended. It came down slowly, perfectly level, until it was about 10 feet off the highway surface, directly in front of our car. The other 2 stayed where they were. I could feel a vibration now, not a sound, not exactly, a low-frequency hum that I felt in my chest and teeth, like standing too close to a massive subwoofer. The sphere in front of us began to change. The surface rippled. Patterns moved across it, geometric shapes that shifted and interlocked in ways that didn't make sense to my eyes. It was like watching liquid metal flow, except the metal was light itself. I felt dizzy looking at it. I forced myself to look away. "Aiden, what do we do?" Miguel's voice was tight. "We stay calm," I said, though I didn't feel calm at all. "We don't run. We don't approach. We just wait." The vibration grew stronger. I could feel it in my bones now. My vision started to blur at the edges. I tasted copper in my mouth. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The vibration cut out. The sphere in front of us stopped shifting. For a moment, everything was perfectly still. Then all 3 spheres shot straight up. They didn't accelerate gradually. They snapped upward, like they'd been yanked by invisible cables, covering what must have been 1,000 feet in less than a second. They paused high in the sky, 3 bright points in a triangle, and then they shot west, toward the ridge, and disappeared over it. The night went dark again. The stars came back. The desert was silent. I leaned against the hood of the patrol car and tried to catch my breath. Miguel was bent over with his hands on his knees, breathing hard. "You okay?" I asked. "No," he said. "Definitely not." I tried the radio again. Still dead. I tried the ignition. Nothing. We waited. At 2:40 a.m., another patrol car came over the hill from the north, headlights bright. It slowed and pulled up behind us. Sergeant Kellerman got out. "You boys all right?" he called. "We're fine," I said. "But the car's dead. Everything's dead." Kellerman walked up and looked at our unit. He tried the ignition himself. Nothing. He popped the hood and checked the battery terminals. Everything looked normal. "What happened?" he asked. I looked at Miguel. He looked back at me. We both knew what we'd seen. We also knew how it would sound. "We saw 3 large spheres," I said. "Same type as before, but much bigger. They hovered over us for about a minute, then left. Right after that, the car died." Kellerman's expression didn't change. He just nodded. "I'm calling a tow. You 2 ride back with me." The tow truck arrived 40 minutes later. They hooked up our unit and hauled it back to the station. Kellerman drove us in. Nobody said much. At the station, the mechanics looked at our car. They checked the battery, the alternator, the fuses, the computer. Everything tested fine. They jumped the battery, and the car started right up like nothing had ever been wrong. The head mechanic came to find me in the break room. "I don't know what to tell you, Roswell. There's nothing wrong with this car. Electrically, mechanically, everything's in spec." "It was completely dead out there," I said. "I believe you, but I can't find a reason for it." I thanked him and went to file my report. Miguel was already at a computer, typing. We finished around the same time and submitted them through the system. Agent Carver showed up 6 hours later. This time the interview was longer. He went through every detail. What time did we first notice the electrical failure? Exactly where were we parked? How long did the spheres hover? Did they make any sound? Did we experience any physical effects? Did we see any other vehicles in the area? I answered everything honestly. When I finished, Carver sat back and tapped his pen on his notebook. "Officer Roswell, I'm going to be frank with you. What you've described matches a pattern we've been tracking for several years in this region. We don't have answers yet, but we're working on it. In the meantime, I need you to understand something. This information is sensitive. It's not classified in the traditional sense, but we ask that you exercise discretion in who you discuss it with." "Understood," I said. "One more thing," Carver said. "Have you noticed any changes in your health since the encounter? Headaches, fatigue, sleep disturbances?" "No," I said. "Should I be worried?" "We don't have evidence of lasting effects, but if anything develops, contact me immediately." He left. Miguel and I were told to take the next 2 nights off. Mandatory rest after a critical incident, they called it. We didn't argue. Miguel called me on the second night. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "Do what?" "Night patrol, that sector. I put in for a transfer to day shift. They approved it." I sat with that for a moment. "I don't blame you." "You should do the same," he said. "I'm thinking about it. Aiden, we saw something out there that we can't explain. Something that shut down a modern vehicle with some kind of, I don't even know what to call it. And nobody can tell us what it was or if it's safe. I have 2 kids at home. I can't keep rolling out there every night wondering if I'm going to see those things again." "I get it," I said. "I really do." "So, put in for a transfer. Work days. Work a different sector. Just stop putting yourself in front of this." "I'll think about it," I said, but I already knew I wouldn't. I'm not a brave person. I'm not chasing some mystery or trying to prove something. I just know that if I walk away from it now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I was running from. And I can't live with that. Miguel transferred to day shift the following week. We still work for the same station, but our paths don't cross much anymore. When they do, we're friendly, professional. We don't talk about what we saw. I still work nights. I still patrol that sector. I haven't seen the spheres again. Not yet. But I've noticed things. Twice in the past 2 months I've had electrical flickers in the patrol car. Brief, less than a second, but enough to make my stomach drop. Both times I was on I-15 between Baker and the Nevada line. Once I saw a white light in the distance while I was pulled over for a break. It was high up, moving west to east, steady and silent. It could have been a satellite. It could have been a plane. I told myself that's what it was. And 3 weeks ago, I stopped to help a stranded motorist near Zizk's Road. An older man with a broken-down sedan. While I was calling for a tow, he looked at me and asked, "You ever see anything strange out here at night?" I paused. "Like what?" "Lights," he said. "Lights that don't move like planes. Lights that watch you." I thought about lying. I thought about brushing it off. Instead, I said, "Yeah, I have." He nodded. "Good, I'm not crazy then." "No, sir," I said. "You're not." December 18th. I was running solo that night. We were short-staffed because of the holidays, and I'd volunteered to take a double shift. The money was good, and honestly, I preferred being out there alone. No one to worry about except myself. The temperature had dropped into the low 20s. A cold front had pushed through from the north, bringing clear skies and air so crisp it hurt to breathe. I was running north on I-15 past the Halloran Summit, the same stretch where we'd had the encounter in November. At 3:17 a.m., my headlights caught something on the shoulder ahead. Not a vehicle, not an animal, a person. I slowed down. As I got closer, I could see it was a man standing beside the white fog line, facing the desert. He wasn't moving, just standing there in a white t-shirt and jeans. No jacket, no visible vehicle anywhere near him. I pulled over about 50 feet past him and put the car in park. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The cold hit me immediately. "Sir," I called out, "you okay?" He didn't turn around, didn't move at all. I approached slowly, keeping my flashlight on him. "Sir, I'm with the highway patrol. Are you hurt? Do you need assistance?" Still nothing. When I got within about 10 feet, I could see his breath making small clouds in the air. He was alive, breathing, but completely motionless. I moved around to see his face. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead at the empty desert. His expression was blank. Not scared, not confused, just empty. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. I keyed my radio. "Dispatch 3 Adam 7. I have a possible 5150 on the northbound shoulder of I-15 at milepost 238. Single male, 20s or 30s, unresponsive. Requesting EMS. Copy 3 Adam 7. EMS is 25 minutes out from Baker." I moved closer to the man. "Sir, I'm going to check you for injuries. Is that okay?" He didn't respond. I reached out slowly and touched his shoulder. His skin was ice cold through the thin fabric of his shirt. That's when I noticed the mark. On the inside of his left forearm, there was a perfect circle about the size of a silver dollar. The skin was lighter than the surrounding area, smooth, like a healed burn scar. It looked exactly like the marks that had appeared on Miguel's hand and the other places the light had touched. My stomach dropped. I looked back at the man's face. His eyes were tracking something I couldn't see, moving slowly from left to right across the horizon. "What are you looking at?" I asked quietly. He blinked once, slowly. Then his mouth opened. "They're still watching," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Who's watching?" "The lights. They're always watching." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "When did you see the lights?" I asked. "October," he said. "I stopped here, my car died. Then they came." October. The same month as our encounters. "What happened to your car?" I asked. "Gone," he said. When I woke up, it was gone. I looked around. The highway stretched empty in both directions. No abandoned vehicles, no tracks leading into the desert. "How long have you been out here?" He didn't answer that. He just kept staring at the horizon, his eyes moving, tracking something invisible. I heard a sound then, a low hum, barely audible, felt more than heard. The same frequency I'd felt during our November encounter. My chest tightened. I looked up at the sky. It was clear, stars bright, nothing unusual, but the hum was growing. The man turned his head toward me for the first time. His eyes focused on mine, and for a moment I saw something in them. Fear. Deep, primal fear. "You should go," he said. "I'm not leaving you out here." "You should go," he repeated, more insistent. before they come back. The hum grew louder. I could feel it vibrating through my boots now, coming up from the ground. I grabbed the man's arm. "Come on, get in the car." He didn't resist, but he didn't help either. He was dead weight, and I had to half-drag him to the patrol car. I got the back door open and guided him in. He sat down mechanically, staring straight ahead through the divider. I ran to the driver's side and got in. My hands were shaking as I reached for the ignition. The engine started. The lights stayed on. Everything seemed normal, but the hum was still there. I put the car in drive and accelerated, pulling back onto the highway. In the rearview mirror, I saw it. A single sphere, small, like the first one we'd encountered, rising slowly from the desert floor exactly where the man had been standing. It climbed to about 20 feet, stopped, and just hovered there, watching us leave. I didn't slow down. I kept my foot on the gas and my eyes on the road ahead. The hum faded after about half a mile, dropping away like I'd driven out of range of a radio station. I glanced at the man in the back seat. He was still staring straight ahead, but I saw a single tear running down his cheek. "You're okay now," I said. "You're safe." "No one's safe," he whispered. EMS met me at the Baker exit. They checked the man's vitals and found him hypothermic but stable. They wrapped him in blankets and took him to the hospital in Barstow. I followed in my patrol car and stayed while they examined him. The doctor found 3 more circular marks, one on his ankle, one behind his right ear, and one on his lower back. All the same size, all perfectly round, all healed like old scars. They ran blood work. Everything came back normal. No drugs, no alcohol, no medical conditions that would explain his state. When I asked if I could speak with him, the doctor said he'd gone completely nonverbal. He would eat if fed, drink if given water, but he wouldn't speak or respond to questions. I left my card with the hospital staff and asked them to call me if his condition changed. Then I filed another report. Another encounter, another set of impossible details that would go into a file somewhere and disappear. Agent Carver called me the next day. He asked if I'd kept the man's information. I had. I gave him everything. "We'll follow up," Carver said. "In the meantime, Officer Roswell, I need to ask you something. Are you sure you want to keep working this sector?" "I'm sure," I said. "Even after this?" "Especially after this. Someone needs to be out there who knows what to look for." There was a long pause. Then Carver said, "Be careful, officer. Whatever these things are, they're showing a pattern of interaction now. That means they're not just passing through. They're here for a reason." "What reason?" I asked. "That's what we're trying to figure out." I'm writing this because I think people should know. Not because I want attention or because I think I have answers. I don't have answers. I just have what I saw, what Miguel saw, what others have seen, and what's probably still out there. If you drive through the Mojave Desert at night, especially on I-15 or State Route 127, and you see a white light that doesn't behave like anything you recognize, don't approach it. Don't try to take pictures. Don't try to make contact. Just note the location, the time, and keep moving. If your vehicle starts to fail for no reason, if your electronics cut out, if you feel a vibration in your chest that has no source, pull over. Stay in your car if you can. If you can't, get clear and wait it out. Don't run. Don't panic. And if you see multiple large spheres in formation, glowing bright enough to light up the desert, understand that you're seeing something we don't fully understand yet. Something that operates by rules we haven't figured out. Something that may or may not have an interest in us. I still patrol those roads. I still watch the sky. And every night when I roll out of the Barstow station and head into the dark, I carry Agent Carver's card in my wallet and a knot of tension in my stomach that doesn't go away until I see the sunrise. Miguel made his choice. He got out. He's probably smarter than I am, but I'm still here, and I'm still watching, because whatever those lights are, they're still out there, and somebody needs to pay attention. I teach 4th grade in Riverside, California. I'm 29 years old. My name is Kara Durrell, and I've driven the route between Riverside and Las Vegas at least 40 times. It's a simple drive, I-15 north through the desert, 4 hours if you keep a steady pace and don't stop much. I know where the good rest stops are, where the gas gets expensive, and which exits have nothing but closed-down diners and wind. I make the trip once a month to visit my brother Marcus. He moved to Vegas 3 years ago for work, and I go see him on the second weekend of every month. We have dinner, catch up, and I drive home Sunday evening. It's routine, comfortable. I've never had trouble on that road, until February 11th of this year. I left Marcus's apartment in Henderson around 6:30 p.m. The sun was already down and the temperature was dropping fast. I'd filled up the tank, grabbed a coffee, and checked my phone. Full battery, good signal. The drive home was going to be easy. I was tired but not exhausted. I'd had a good weekend. I took I-15 south out of Vegas and settled into the rhythm of the highway. Traffic was light. A few semis, some cars scattered in the lanes, nothing unusual. By the time I passed Jean and crossed into California, the traffic thinned even more. Just me and the occasional truck running through the dark. The desert at night is a strange thing. During the day, it's harsh and bright, and everything stands out in sharp detail. At night, it becomes a void. The road is a lit stripe cutting through blackness, and beyond the edges of your headlights there's nothing. Just empty space and the distant shapes of mountains you can barely see against the sky. I like it, usually. It's peaceful. No billboards, no strip malls, no crowded streets. Just the hum of the engine and the white line pulling you forward. I was about 20 miles past the California border, somewhere between Primm and Baker, when it happened. The dashboard lights flickered. Not a quick blink. A slow dimming, like someone was turning down the brightness. The radio, which had been playing a classic rock station out of Vegas, went to static, then cut out completely. The headlights faded, and then the engine died. No sputter, no warning shake or rattle. It just stopped. The car was still rolling at about 55 miles per hour, coasting on momentum. I gripped the steering wheel and guided the car toward the shoulder. The power steering was gone, so it took effort to turn the wheel. The brakes still worked, but they felt stiff without the engine assist. I managed to get onto the gravel shoulder and rolled to a stop. The night closed in immediately. Without the headlights, the desert was pitch black. I could see stars overhead, bright and thick, but nothing else. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, trying to process what had just happened. I turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. The dashboard was completely dark. No dome light, no indicator lights, nothing. It was like the battery had been ripped out of the car. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not one bar. I'd had full signal 5 minutes ago. Now it showed nothing, not even a search for service. Just a blank space where the bars should have been. I tried calling Marcus anyway. The call wouldn't go through. I tried 911, same thing. The phone was working, but it couldn't connect to anything. I got out of the car. The cold hit me first. It had been in the low 60s when I left Vegas. Now it felt like it had dropped 20 degrees in the span of a few minutes. My breath came out in small clouds. I pulled my jacket tighter and looked around. The highway stretched empty in both directions. No headlights coming, no taillights fading in the distance. Just the dark ribbon of asphalt and the gravel shoulder, and beyond that, the void of the desert. I walked to the front of the car and popped the hood. I don't know much about engines, but I know enough to check if something obvious is wrong. A loose cable, a disconnected battery terminal, something simple. I had a small flashlight on my keychain. I clicked it on and leaned over the engine. Everything looked normal. The battery cables were connected. Nothing was smoking or leaking or broken. I touched the engine block with the back of my hand. It wasn't hot, it was warm, but not as hot as it should have been after running for 2 hours. It felt like it had been sitting for a while, cooling down. That didn't make sense. I closed the hood and looked up at the sky. The stars were incredible. I'd never seen them this bright, not even out here. The Milky Way was a thick band of light cutting across the dome of the sky. I could see the curve of it, the depth, like I was looking into a tunnel. And then I saw the line. It cut across the southern horizon, moving west to east. Not a shooting star, not a plane. A straight, perfectly level line of white light, moving fast and silent. It had no blink, no trail, no sound. It was just a line, gliding across the sky like someone had drawn it with a ruler. I watched it for maybe 3 seconds. Then it was gone, disappeared behind the mountains to the east. I felt the hair rise on my arms. I stood there, staring at the empty sky, trying to tell myself it was a satellite or a high-altitude aircraft or something normal. But I'd seen satellites before. They move slower, they twinkle. They don't look like solid lines of light. I got back in the car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking. I tried the ignition again. Still nothing. I tried my phone again, still no signal. I checked the time on my phone. 8:47 p.m. I decided to wait. Someone would come by eventually. A trucker, a highway patrol, someone. I wasn't going to walk into the desert in the dark. That's how people get lost and die. I sat in the driver's seat, wrapped my jacket around me, and waited. At some point I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was jerking awake to the sound of knocking on my window. I looked up, disoriented. There was a flashlight beam in my face. I squinted and saw the shape of a man standing outside the driver's side door. "Ma'am, you okay?" The voice was male, calm. Professional, I fumbled for the lock and cracked the window about an inch. "I'm fine. My car died." "I'm Jace Holloway. I do roadside assistance out of Barstow. Got a call about a stranded vehicle out here." "I didn't call anyone," I said. "I don't have signal. Someone must have seen you and called it in. You been here long?" I looked at my phone. The screen lit up, showing 11:34 p.m. My stomach dropped. I'd been sitting in the car for almost 3 hours. I don't know," I said. I thought it was only a few minutes. Jace stepped back and let me open the door. He was a tall man, maybe mid-40s, with a thick beard and a work jacket that said Holloway's Towing on the back. His tow truck was parked behind my car with its amber lights flashing. "You feeling okay?" he asked. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. "My car just died. Everything shut off at once. Engine, lights, radio, everything. Let me take a look." He walked to the front of the car and I popped the hood again. He spent a few minutes checking things with a work light, poking at cables, testing connections. When he came back, he had a strange expression on his face. "This is going to sound weird," he said, "but your engine is cold." "What do you mean?" "I mean it's cold. Like it's been sitting here for hours without running. But you said it died while you were driving, right?" "Yeah, I was doing about 55 when it just cut out." He scratched his beard. "That doesn't make sense. If it died while you were driving, the block should still have some heat. This feels like it's been off for a long time. I don't understand." "Neither do I." He pulled out a small device from his pocket, something with a digital screen and a cable. "Let me check the battery." He connected it to the battery terminals and frowned at the screen. Battery's got a full charge, 12 volts. That's perfect. So, it's not the battery. Then, what is it? I don't know yet. He walked around the car, checking the tires, looking under the chassis. Then he stopped and looked up at the sky. You see anything weird out here tonight? He asked. My pulse quickened. Like what? Lights, things in the sky, anything unusual? I hesitated. Then I told him about the line of light I'd seen right after the car died. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I've heard about that. Heard about what? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, then looked back at the sky. This stretch of road, he said. Between here and Baker. I get calls out here a lot. Dead cars, dead batteries, electronics going haywire. And the people always say the same thing. They saw lights, and they can't account for time. What do you mean, can't account for time? They think they've been stopped for 10 minutes, but it's been 2 hours. They think it's 9 p.m., but it's midnight. Time gets slippery out here. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Do you know what causes it? I asked. He shrugged. No idea. But I know it's real. Happened to me once, too. What happened? He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to tell me. Then he said, I'll tell you on the way. Let me hook you up and we'll get you to Barstow. I've got a shop there. I'll take a closer look at your car in the light. Jace hooked my car to the tow truck and I climbed into the passenger seat of the cab. It was warm inside, the heater running full blast. He pulled back onto the highway and we headed west toward Barstow. So, I said, what happened to you? Jace kept his eyes on the road. 3 years ago, I was out here on a call, same kind of thing. Dead car, middle of the night. I hooked it up and started driving back. About halfway to Barstow, my truck died, just like yours. Everything went dark. Engine cut out, radio went dead. What did you do? I sat there. I didn't know what else to do. I tried the ignition. Nothing. I got out to check the engine. That's when I saw it. Saw what? A light above the highway. It was big, maybe the size of a school bus, hovering about 50 feet up. Didn't make a sound, just sat there, glowing this soft white color. I stood there staring at it for, I don't know how long. Could have been a minute, could have been an hour. Next thing I knew, I was back in the truck and the engine was running again. The light was gone, and I'd lost 2.5 hours. I felt my hands go cold. Did you tell anyone? I told the sheriff. He wrote it down and said he'd look into it. Never heard anything back. I told a few other people. Most of them thought I was making it up, or that I'd fallen asleep. But I know what I saw, and I know I didn't fall asleep. We drove in silence for a while. I looked out at the dark desert passing by. Somewhere out there, something was happening that we didn't understand. Something that could stop a car cold, erase hours, and leave people standing on empty highways with no memory of what happened. Does it happen a lot? I asked. More than people know, Jace said. I get maybe 1 or 2 calls a month from this stretch. And that's just the ones who call for a tow. How many others just get their car started again and drive off? How many don't report it? Why doesn't anyone do anything about it? He glanced at me. Who's going to believe it? You going to call the news and say your car got stopped by a UFO? They'll laugh you off the phone. He was right. I knew he was right. We reached Barstow just after midnight. Jace's shop was a small garage on the east side of town, a cinder block building with 2 bays and a gravel lot. He pulled my car into one of the bays and lowered it off the tow. I'll check it out tomorrow morning in the daylight, he said. You need a place to stay tonight? I'll get a hotel, I said. He wrote down the name of a cheap motel a few blocks away. Tell them I sent you. They'll give you a decent rate." I thanked him and called an Uber. While I waited, Jace handed me a business card. "If you remember anything else," he said, "or if anything weird happens, call me." I took the card. Why would anything else happen? He looked at me seriously. Sometimes it doesn't stop with one night. I checked into the motel and tried to sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that line of light cutting across the sky. I saw the clock on my phone jumping from 8:47 to 11:34 with no memory in between. I got up around 3 a.m. and sat by the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. Barstow at night is a quiet place. A few trucks on the distant highway, a gas station sign glowing in the dark, and not much else. I pulled out my phone and Googled UFO sightings Mojave Desert. The results were overwhelming. Pages and pages of reports. Lights over I-15. Strange craft near Baker. Missing time on Highway 127. Engines dying near Zags Road. It went back decades. Hundreds of reports. Most of them dismissed or explained away as weather balloons, drones, military aircraft. But the details were too similar, too consistent. People describing the same things I'd experienced. The sudden electrical failure, the lost time, the cold engine that should have been hot, the lights in the sky that moved in ways that didn't make sense. I read until the sun started to rise. Then I showered, got dressed, and walked to Jace's garage. He was already there, leaning over the open hood of my car with a diagnostics computer plugged into the dashboard port. He looked up when I walked in. "Morning," he said. "Morning. Did you find anything?" He straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. "That's the strange part. I can't find anything wrong." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the car is fine. Batteries charged. Alternators working. Starters good. Fuel pumps good. All the fuses are intact. The computer's not showing any error codes. There's no mechanical reason this car should have stopped. But it did stop. I know. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying I can't find a cause." He closed the hood and gestured to the driver's seat. "Try starting it." I got in and turned the key. The engine fired up immediately, smooth and strong. All the dashboard lights came on. The radio started playing. Everything worked perfectly. I stared at the dashboard in disbelief. Jace leaned in through the window. "See, it's like nothing ever happened." "But it did happen," I said. "I believe you, I just can't explain it." I turned off the engine and got out. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing. I didn't fix anything." "You towed me. You checked the car." He waved me off. "Don't worry about it. Just be careful on the drive home. If anything feels wrong, pull over and call me." I thanked him and got back in the car. The drive back to Riverside should have taken about 2.5 hours. I decided to take my time, stay alert, and if anything even slightly strange happened, I'd pull over immediately. The drive was uneventful. I took I-15 south through the desert, past Baker, past the spot where my car had died the night before. Everything looked normal in the daylight. Just another empty stretch of highway with mountains in the distance and scrub brush on both sides. I made it home by 10 a.m. I parked in my apartment complex and sat in the car for a minute trying to process everything. I'd lost 3 hours last night. My car had died for no mechanical reason. I'd seen something in the sky I couldn't explain. And according to Jace, I wasn't the first. I wanted to believe it was just a weird coincidence. A freak electrical problem that fixed itself. A satellite I'd misidentified. A memory lapse from being tired. But I knew better. Something had happened out there in the desert. Something real. 3 weeks went by. I went back to work, taught my classes, graded papers, lived my normal life. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. What would I say? I saw a UFO and lost 3 hours? They'd think I was crazy, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started researching more seriously. I joined online forums where people shared their experiences. I read books about UFO encounters in the Southwest. I learned about the patterns, the common elements, the electrical failures, the missing time, the sense of being watched. And I learned about the marks. Several people reported waking up after an encounter with strange marks on their skin. Small circles, perfectly round, like burn scars but without the pain or scarring process. They appeared overnight and never faded. I checked myself carefully. Arms, legs, torso, neck. Nothing, no marks. I felt relieved. On March 9th, exactly 4 weeks after the incident, I was getting ready for bed when I noticed it. A small circle on the inside of my left wrist, about the size of a dime. The skin was slightly lighter than the surrounding area, smooth, almost shiny. It looked like a scar that had been there for years, but I'd never seen it before. I ran my finger over it. No pain, no texture difference, just a visual mark. My hands started shaking. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of it. Then I sent a text to Jace. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. I found a mark on my wrist, circular. Looks old, but it's new. He replied 3 minutes later. Same thing happened to me after my encounter. 3 weeks later, I found one on my shoulder, still have it. What does it mean? I typed. I don't know, but you're not alone. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the mark. I thought about calling my doctor, but what would I say? I have a mysterious mark that appeared after I maybe got abducted by aliens. They'd refer me to a psychiatrist. I decided to wait, watch it, see if it changed. It didn't. Over the next few days, it stayed exactly the same. A small, perfect circle on my wrist, a reminder of something I couldn't explain. The second weekend of March, I was supposed to visit Marcus again. I called him on Thursday and told him I wasn't feeling well, that I'd come next month instead. He was disappointed but understanding. The truth was, I didn't want to drive that highway again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But on Saturday night, around 10 p.m., my phone rang. It was Marcus. "Kara, I need your help," he said. His voice was tight, stressed. "What's wrong?" "It's Sarah. She's in the hospital in Riverside. She had an accident. I'm driving down right now, but I'm still 3 hours away. Can you go sit with her until I get there?" Sarah was Marcus's girlfriend. I'd met her a few times. She was sweet, kind, and Marcus loved her. "Of course," I said. "What happened?" "Car accident on the 91. She's okay, but she's alone and scared. They're keeping her overnight for observation. I'm on my way." I grabbed my keys and drove to Riverside Regional Hospital. I found Sarah in a room on the 3rd floor. She had a bandage on her forehead and a bruised cheek, but she was awake and alert. "Kara," she said when she saw me. "Thank you for coming." "Of course. Marcus is on his way. How are you feeling?" "Sore, shaken up, but okay." I sat with her, held her hand, and waited. Marcus arrived around 1:30 a.m. He hugged me, thanked me, and I left them alone. I walked to my car in the hospital parking garage. It was quiet, almost empty. My footsteps echoed on the concrete. I unlocked my car and was about to get in when I felt it. A vibration, low and deep, felt more than heard. It came up through the ground, into my legs, into my chest. I stopped and looked around. The parking garage was empty. No cars running, no people, no source for the vibration. It grew stronger. I could feel it in my teeth now, in my bones. I looked up at the ceiling of the garage, at the concrete slabs and support beams, nothing unusual. Then I looked past the edge of the garage, out at the night sky beyond. A light was descending. Not a helicopter, not a plane. A smooth, silent sphere of white light, dropping slowly from the sky toward the parking garage. I got in my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine started. I threw it in reverse and backed out of the space. The light was closer now, maybe 200 feet up, still descending. I shifted into drive and hit the gas. The tires squealed as I raced down the ramp toward the exit. The vibration was so strong now I could barely hold the steering wheel steady. I burst out of the garage onto the street and kept driving. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I drove straight home, parked in the underground garage of my apartment complex, and ran to my unit. I locked the door, closed all the blinds, and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. The vibration was gone. The night was silent, but I knew it had found me. Whatever was out there in the desert, it hadn't stayed in the desert. It had followed me home. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with all the lights on, watching the windows, waiting for something to appear. Nothing did. By sunrise, I was exhausted and wired on adrenaline. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face a classroom full of 9-year-olds while my hands were still shaking. Around 9 a.m., I called Jace. "It happened again," I said. "What happened?" I told him about the parking garage, the vibration, the descending light. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You need to come up here." "To Barstow?" "Yeah, there's someone you need to talk to." "Who?" "Just come. I'll text you the address." I didn't want to drive back to the desert. Every instinct told me to stay away. But I also knew I couldn't live like this, jumping at every strange sound, hiding in my apartment. I needed answers. I got in my car and drove north. The daylight helped. The desert looked normal under the bright sun, hot, empty, ordinary. I reached Barstow around noon. Jace's text directed me to a small house on the north side of town, a single-story ranch with a chain-link fence and a dusty yard. Jace was waiting on the porch. With him was an older woman, maybe in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Kara, this is Dr. Ellen Reeves," Jace said. "She's a retired psychologist. She studies this stuff." Dr. Reeves offered her hand. "Call me Ellen. Come inside." The house was cluttered but organized. Books everywhere, stacked on shelves and tables. Maps on the walls, marked with pins and circles. A large corkboard covered with newspaper clippings, photos, and handwritten notes. We sat in the living room. Ellen poured 3 glasses of iced tea and settled into an armchair. "Jace told me about your experience," she said. "The engine failure, the missing time, the mark on your wrist, and now the encounter at the hospital." "Do you know what's happening to me?" I asked. "I have theories. I've been researching this phenomenon for 15 years. I've interviewed over 100 people who've had similar experiences along this stretch of desert." "And what have you found?" She leaned forward. "I've found patterns, consistent elements that appear across dozens of independent accounts. Electrical failures, missing time, physical marks, and what I call follow-up encounters. After the initial contact, the phenomenon sometimes continues to engage with the individual. Why? I don't know. No one does. But it's not random. There's an intelligence behind it, a purpose. What kind of purpose?" Ellen stood and walked to the corkboard. She pointed to a map of Southern California and Nevada, covered with red pins. These are documented encounters over the past 20 years. Notice the concentration. I-15 between Barstow and the Nevada line. Highway 127 to Death Valley. Route 95 near Searchlight. It's not the entire desert, it's specific corridors, specific areas. Why those areas? I don't know, but I have a hypothesis. These corridors run along old mining routes, geological fault lines, and areas with high magnetic anomalies. Whatever this phenomenon is, it may be drawn to these specific conditions. I looked at the map. My incident was right in the middle of the highest concentration zone. "What about the marks?" I asked, showing her my wrist. She examined it carefully, then nodded. "I've seen dozens of these. They appear anywhere from 3 days to 4 weeks after an encounter. Always circular, always the same size, always in places that would normally be covered by clothing." "What are they?" "I don't know. Tissue samples show normal skin, no scarring, no foreign material. They're just there." Ellen walked to her desk and pulled out a photo album. She opened it to reveal pages of photographs, close-ups of marks on wrists, ankles, shoulders, behind ears, all perfectly circular, all identical in size to mine. "This is Margaret Allen," she said, pointing to one photo. "Retired nurse from Victorville. Had an encounter in 2018. Found 3 marks a week later. This is Tom Bradshaw, long-haul trucker. 2 marks, both on his lower back. This is Amy Rodriguez, college student, 1 mark on her ankle." She turned the pages slowly. Dozens of people, dozens of marks. "Do they ever go away?" I asked. "No. Once they appear, they're permanent. I've been tracking some of these people for over a decade. The marks never fade, never change." "Have you tried removing one, surgically?" Ellen nodded. One subject agreed to have his removed. A dermatologist excised the entire area and sent it for pathology. The tissue was completely normal, but here's the strange part. 3 days after the surgery, as the incision was healing, the mark reappeared. Not on the scar tissue. Next to it, same size, same appearance. I felt my skin crawl. "That's impossible." "That's what the dermatologist said. He documented it with photographs and tried to explain it as a pigmentation anomaly. But he couldn't. The mark simply reformed." She closed the album and looked at me seriously. "Kara, I need to tell you something else. Something I don't share with everyone." "What?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "A small percentage of people who've had these encounters report developing what I call heightened awareness. They start noticing things other people don't. Patterns, connections. Some report feeling when another encounter's about to happen, like a warning system." "Has that happened to you?" "Yes. After my own encounter in 2008, I started noticing things. I'd know when someone was about to report an incident, sometimes days before they called. I'd feel a pressure in my chest when I drove through certain areas of the desert. I learned to trust it." "Are you saying these encounters change us? Physically?" "I'm saying they leave more than marks on our skin. They leave something we can't see, something we can't measure, but it's there." Jace, who had been quiet, spoke up. "I feel it too. That pressure, like the air gets thicker before something happens." I thought about the vibration I'd felt in the parking garage, the way I'd known something was wrong before I saw the light. "What does it mean?" I asked. Ellen sat back down. "I don't know, but I think these encounters aren't random observations. I think they're selections. We're being chosen for something, marked for something. For what? I wish I knew." We talked for another hour. Ellen showed me her research notes, her correspondence with other researchers. her collection of news clippings about unexplained phenomena in the desert. Then she asked me something unexpected. Would you be willing to meet another witness? Someone who had an encounter similar to yours. Who? His name is David Marsh. He's a geology professor at Cal State Barstow. Had an encounter 6 months ago on Highway 127. He's been struggling with it. I think talking to someone else who's been through it might help him. And it might help you too. I agreed. Ellen made a call. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. David Marsh was a man in his early 50s, with graying hair and tired eyes. He shook my hand with a grip that was firm but trembling slightly. We sat in Ellen's living room. David looked at me for a long moment, then said, "She told me you saw the light, that your car died." "Yes." "Did you lose time?" 3 hours. He nodded slowly. "I lost 5. I was driving back from a field study near Death Valley. My truck just stopped. Everything went dark. Next thing I knew, I was sitting on the side of the road and it was dawn. I'd lost the entire night." "Did you find marks?" He pulled up his sleeve and showed me his forearm. 2 circular marks, side by side, like a figure 8. "They appeared 2 weeks later," he said. "I went to 3 different doctors. No one could explain them." "What did you tell people?" "Nothing. I didn't tell anyone. Not my colleagues, not my wife. I thought I was losing my mind. Then Ellen found me." "How?" "I made a post on an astronomy forum, asking if anyone had seen strange lights over Death Valley. Ellen saw it and reached out. She told me I wasn't alone. That helped more than anything." He looked down at his hands. "But I still don't know what to do with this. I'm a scientist. I work with facts, evidence, measurable data, and now I have this experience that I can't explain, can't prove, can't fit into any framework I understand." I knew exactly how he felt. "Do you still go out there?" I asked. "To the desert?" "I have to. It's my work. But I only go during the day now, and I never go alone." "Have you seen it again?" "Twice. Both times at a distance. Just lights in the sky. Watching." We talked for over an hour, comparing experiences, finding the common threads. The electrical failure, the missing time, the marks, the sense of being watched, the way normal life suddenly felt fragile and strange. Before he left, David gave me his email. "If you ever need to talk to someone who understands, reach out. Ellen's research is important, but sometimes you just need to talk to someone who's been there." I thanked him and promised I would. After David left, Ellen made tea and we sat on her back porch. The sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "How many people like David and me are out there?" I asked. "More than you'd think. I have documented cases from over 300 individuals just in this region, and those are only the ones willing to talk about it. For every person who reports an encounter, I estimate there are 5 or 10 who never say anything. Why not? Fear, embarrassment, the stigma. People don't want to be labeled as crazy. They don't want their friends and family looking at them differently, so they stay silent and carry it alone. That's why you do this," I said, "the research. You're giving people a place to come. I'm trying, but it's not enough. We need more resources, more serious scientific attention. This phenomenon is real, it's ongoing, and it's affecting hundreds, maybe thousands of people. But it's dismissed as fringe, as pseudoscience." She looked out at the desert. "There's something out there, Kara, something intelligent, something that's been here for a long time, and for some reason, it's choosing to interact with us. We need to understand why. Do you think we ever will? I have to believe we will. Because the alternative is living with a mystery that defines us, but we can never solve. And I can't accept that. I stayed in Barstow until evening. Before I left, Ellen gave me a folder with copies of her research and a list of resources. Support groups, online forums, researchers who were doing legitimate work on the phenomenon. Stay connected, she said. Don't isolate yourself. That's when the fear wins. I drove home as the stars came out. The desert looked peaceful under the darkening sky. Beautiful, even. It was hard to reconcile that beauty with what I knew was out there. Somewhere in that vast darkness, something was watching. Something that had touched my life and changed it forever. The next few weeks were difficult. I went back to work, but I felt disconnected from everything. My students seemed so innocent, so untouched by the strangeness I'd encountered. I envied them. I started having trouble sleeping. Not because of nightmares, but because I'd lie awake listening to every sound. The wind against the windows, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic. I'd analyze each sound, trying to determine if it was normal or if it was the vibration, the warning I'd learned to recognize. One night, around 2 a.m., I was lying in bed when my phone buzzed. A text from David Marsh. "Are you awake?" "Yes," I replied. "I'm seeing it again, right now, outside my house." My heart started racing. "What are you seeing?" "Light in the sky, stationary. Been there for 10 minutes. Are you safe?" "I don't know. It's just watching." "Do you want me to call someone?" Who would I call? The police? What would I say? He had a point. "Just stay inside," I typed. "Keep your doors locked. Let me know if anything changes." "Okay." I sat up in bed, phone in hand, waiting. 20 minutes passed. Then another text came. "It's gone. Just shot straight up and disappeared. Are you okay?" "Shaken, but okay. Thanks for being there." Any time. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat by my window, watching the sky, wondering if the light would come to my neighborhood next. It didn't. But I knew it could. I knew that whatever line had been crossed that night on I-15, there was no going back. I was marked. I was known. And somewhere, out there in the desert night, something was keeping track. She pulled a folder from a stack on the coffee table and handed it to me. Inside were photocopies of reports, witness statements, and photos of marks identical to mine. "This is what I've documented," she said. "Read it, study it. You'll see you're not alone." I flipped through the pages. Story after story, all eerily similar to mine. People who'd lost time, found marks, experienced follow-up encounters. "What happens next?" I asked. For most people, nothing. The encounters stop, the marks remain, but there are no further incidents. They go back to their lives. And for the others? Ellen hesitated. For a small percentage, the encounters continue. Sometimes for months. Sometimes for years. They report being followed, watched, drawn back to the desert. Some develop health issues. Headaches, fatigue, anxiety. Is there a way to make it stop? I don't know. I've documented people who've moved away, changed their lives completely, and the encounters stopped. Others have stayed in place and never experienced it again. There's no pattern to it. I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. So I just have to wait and hope it doesn't happen again? Ellen reached out and touched my hand. "You have to live your life. Don't let fear control you. But be aware. Pay attention. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts." I stayed in Barstow for another hour, talking with Ellen and Jace. They shared more stories, more details, more theories. By the time I left, my head was spinning with information. The drive back to Riverside was quiet. I kept checking my mirrors, watching the sky, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Over the next 2 months, I tried to return to normal. I went back to work. I saw friends. I visited Marcus, taking the long route through San Bernardino instead of I-15 through the desert. The mark on my wrist remained. I checked it every day. It never changed. I had moments of doubt. Maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe I'd fallen asleep in the car and dreamed the whole thing. Maybe the mark was just a birthmark I'd never noticed before. But I couldn't convince myself. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd felt. In late April, I got an email from Ellen. She'd been contacted by a research group affiliated with a private aerospace company. They were studying anomalous aerial phenomena and wanted to interview people who'd had encounters. "They're legitimate," Ellen wrote. "I vetted them. If you're interested in speaking with them, let me know and I'll make the connection." I thought about it for a week. Did I want to tell my story to strangers? Did I want to be studied like a lab specimen? But I also wanted answers. And maybe these people could provide them. I emailed Ellen back. "Yes, I'll talk to them." 3 weeks later, I drove to a nondescript office building in Pasadena. The company was called Etheric Research Group. I'd Googled them. They were small, privately funded, and focused on aerospace technology and unexplained phenomena. I was met by 2 researchers, Dr. Marcus Lim, a physicist in his 40s, and Dr. Sarah Kwan, a psychologist in her 30s. They were professional, courteous, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. We sat in a conference room. They asked me to tell my story from the beginning. I did. They recorded it, took notes, asked clarifying questions. When I finished, Dr. Lim leaned back in his chair. "Your experience matches what we've been hearing from others," he said. "The electrical failure, the missing time, the physical marks, the follow-up encounter. It's a consistent pattern." "Do you know what causes it?" I asked. "We have theories, but no proof. What we do know is that this phenomenon has been occurring for decades, possibly longer. It's not new, it's not going away, and it's not random." Dr. Kwan spoke up. "We're trying to build a comprehensive database of encounters. We want to find commonalities, understand the mechanisms, and eventually figure out what this is and why it's happening." "And you think you can do that?" "We think it's worth trying," Dr. Lim said. "Science is about asking questions and looking for answers. This is one of the biggest questions there is." They asked if I'd be willing to participate in further studies, medical exams, psychological evaluations, ongoing interviews. I agreed. Over the next few months, I became part of their research cohort. I gave blood samples. I underwent MRI scans. I filled out questionnaires about my health, my sleep, my mental state. They found nothing unusual. No physical anomalies, no psychological disorders. I was, by all measures, a normal, healthy person who'd had an extraordinary experience. The mark on my wrist remained the only physical evidence. During one of my sessions with Dr. Kwan, she asked me to describe my emotional state in the days leading up to encounters. "I feel a pressure," I said. "Like the air gets thicker, and there's a low vibration almost below hearing. I feel it in my chest." She made notes. "How far in advance do you feel this?" "Sometimes hours. Sometimes just minutes. And it's always accurate. You always have an encounter after feeling it." "Not always. Sometimes I feel it and nothing happens. But when something does happen, I always feel it first." Dr. Kwan leaned forward. "Kara, we're finding this pattern in other subjects too. About 40% of people who've had multiple encounters report developing this sensitivity. We don't know what's causing it, but it's real. It's measurable in the sense that people can predict encounters with statistical significance." "What does that mean?" "It means this phenomenon isn't just observing us, it's changing us. On some level, it's creating a connection." The thought made my skin crawl. Dr. Lim joined us for the next part of the session. He brought a tablet and showed me a series of graphs. "These are electromagnetic readings from known encounter sites," he said. "We've been placing sensors in the desert, in the areas with the highest concentration of reports. Notice these spikes." The graphs showed normal baseline readings interrupted by sudden, massive spikes in electromagnetic activity. These spikes occur at the exact times and locations where encounters are reported. Sometimes we detect them before we receive the report. The phenomenon is generating massive EM fields, strong enough to disrupt car electronics, phones, anything with circuitry. "Is it technology?" I asked. "Like human-made technology?" "If it is, it's beyond anything we have. The power requirements alone would be enormous. And the precision. These fields can target a specific vehicle on a highway without affecting others nearby. That level of control is extraordinary." Dr. Kwan added, "We're also finding something else. The people who've had encounters show subtle changes in their own bioelectric fields. Nothing harmful, just different. Like being exposed to the phenomenon leaves an imprint. The marks aren't just on our skin," I said quietly. "No," Dr. Lim agreed, "they're not." In June, Etheric Research Group organized a gathering. 15 people who'd had encounters, all willing to meet and share their experiences. It was held at a conference room in their Pasadena office. I walked in nervous, not knowing what to expect. The room was filled with ordinary people. A middle-aged woman who worked in accounting, a young man who delivered packages, a retired police officer, a college student, a ranch hand. We went around the room, each person sharing their story. The details varied, but the core elements were always the same. The electrical failures, the missing time, the marks, the sense of being watched. One woman, Maria, described waking up in her car on the shoulder of Highway 95 with no memory of the previous 4 hours. She'd been driving home from work. The next thing she knew, it was past midnight and her car was parked neatly on the shoulder, engine off, keys in her lap. A man named Robert talked about seeing a massive craft hover over his truck near Baker. He described it as the size of a football field, completely silent, covered in lights that pulsed in patterns he couldn't understand. An older man named Frank, the retired cop, described responding to a call about strange lights near Zeus Road back in '97. He and his partner had seen 3 spheres hovering over the desert. When they tried to approach, their patrol car died. They sat there for 2 hours until the spheres left and their car mysteriously started again. He'd never filed an official report, too afraid of being laughed at. Listening to their stories, I felt less alone. These weren't crazy people. They were ordinary people who'd experienced something extraordinary, something real. After the formal session, we talked in smaller groups. I spent time with Maria, who lived in Pomona, not far from Riverside. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for it to happen again?" she asked. "Every day," I said. "Me too. I can't relax anymore. Every time I drive at night, I'm watching the sky. Every time my car makes a strange noise, I panic." "Have you seen it again since your first encounter?" "Twice. Both times just lights in the distance. Following me, I pull over and wait, but they never get close. They just watch and then leave. Same with me." She showed me her marks, 3 of them in a triangle pattern on her shoulder blade. "My husband thinks they're birthmarks," she said. "I let him think that. It's easier than trying to explain." Dr. Kwan pulled me aside before I left. "Kara, we're planning an overnight observation in the desert next month. We're going to set up equipment at one of the high-activity sites and monitor for encounters. We'd like you to be there." "Why me?" "Because you have the sensitivity. You can feel when something's about to happen. That advance warning could be invaluable for our readings." I thought about it. The idea of deliberately going back to the desert, to the places where this happened, made my stomach turn. But I also knew I needed to do it. I needed to understand. "Okay," I said, "I'll do it. Thank you. We'll be in touch with the details." In August, 5 months after the initial incident, I decided to drive to Vegas again. I'd been avoiding the route, taking the long way, but I couldn't do that forever. I needed to face it. I left on a Saturday morning in broad daylight. I took I-15 north through the desert. I drove past the spot where my car had died. I looked at the empty shoulder, the gravel, the scrub brush. It looked ordinary, unremarkable. I made it to Vegas without incident. I visited Marcus, had dinner, spent the night. On Sunday evening, I drove home. The sun was setting as I passed through the desert. The sky turned orange, then purple, then dark. I was about 10 miles past Baker when I saw it. A light in my rearview mirror. Not headlights. A single point of white light, high up, maybe 500 feet, following me. I watched it in the mirror. It kept pace with me, matching my speed exactly. When I slowed down, it slowed down. When I sped up, it sped up. My heart started racing. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to stay calm. The light followed me for 5 miles. Then, without warning, it shot straight up and disappeared. I pulled over at the next rest stop and sat in the parking lot, shaking. I called Jace. "It's following me again," I said. "Did it do anything?" "No, it just followed me for a few miles, then left." "Are you okay?" "I don't know." "Do you want me to come get you?" "No, I think I'm okay. I just needed to hear a friendly voice." We talked for a few minutes. He told me to drive safe, stay alert, and call if anything else happened. I got back on the highway and drove home. The light didn't return. 3 weeks later, Dr. Lim called with the details for the overnight observation. We're setting up at a location off Highway 127, about 15 miles north of Baker. It's one of our most active sites. We'll have a team of 6 researchers plus you. We'll have EM sensors, cameras, recording equipment. We'll be there from sunset to sunrise. What do you need me to do? Just be there. If you feel the pressure, the vibration, anything that indicates an encounter is about to happen, you let us know immediately. That will give us time to focus our instruments. And if something does happen, we observe, we record, we don't approach. Safety is our priority. The observation was scheduled for September 14th. As the date got closer, I felt increasingly anxious. I was choosing to put myself in the path of this phenomenon, deliberately seeking it out. But I needed to do it. I needed to be part of finding answers. I drove to the site in the late afternoon. Dr. Lim and his team were already there, setting up equipment in a small clearing about 200 yards off the highway. They had tents, generators, a portable lab setup with computers and monitors. Dr. Kwan greeted me. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous." "That's normal. Remember, if at any point you feel unsafe, we leave. No hesitation." As the sun set, the team ran final checks on the equipment. I sat on a folding chair, watching the desert turn from gold to purple to black. The stars came out, brilliant and thick. Around 10 p.m., I felt it, the pressure. Low and subtle at first, then building. I stood up. "Something's coming," I said. Dr. Lim looked up from his monitors. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Everyone stations," he called out. "Kara's sensing activity." The team moved quickly, adjusting cameras, checking sensor readings. I could see the tension in their movements. This was what they'd been waiting for. The pressure grew stronger. I felt it in my chest, in my teeth. The air felt thick, resistant. "Do you see anything?" Dr. Kwan asked. I scanned the sky. Nothing yet, just stars. Then, on the northern horizon, a glow appeared. Soft at first, then brighter. White light rising slowly from behind a distant ridge. "There," I pointed. Dr. Lim trained a camera on it. "I've got it." The light rose higher, clearing the ridge. It was a sphere, larger than the ones I'd seen before. Maybe 30 feet across. It moved toward us, slow and deliberate. "EM readings are spiking," one of the researchers called out. "We're seeing massive field fluctuations." The sphere stopped about a quarter-mile away, hovering 100 feet above the desert floor. It just sat there, glowing steadily. My heart pounded. The pressure was intense now. I could barely breathe. "Kara, are you okay?" Dr. Kwan put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm okay," I managed to say. "Just intense." We watched the sphere for several minutes. It didn't move, didn't change, just hovered, as if observing us the same way we were observing it. Then a second sphere appeared, then a third. They formed a triangle in the sky, perfectly spaced, perfectly aligned. "My God," Dr. Lim whispered. The 3 spheres began to pulse, slow, rhythmic, all in sync. "Are you recording this?" someone asked. "Everything. We're getting it all." The pulsing continued for maybe 2 minutes. Then, simultaneously, all 3 spheres shot straight up and disappeared. The pressure vanished instantly, the air cleared. I could breathe again. The team was quiet for a moment, stunned. Then they erupted into activity, checking recordings, reviewing data, comparing notes. Dr. Lim came over to me. "Thank you. That warning gave us time to prepare. We got clean recordings of the entire event." "What do you think they were doing?" I asked. "I don't know, but they were definitely aware of us. They maintained distance. They displayed a pattern, like communication or demonstration. This is incredible data." We stayed until dawn. The spheres didn't return. As the sun rose, we packed up the equipment and prepared to leave. Dr. Kwan pulled me aside. "How do you feel?" "Exhausted, but okay. Actually, better than okay. Seeing it happen while I was with people who believe me, who are taking it seriously, it helps. You're incredibly brave for doing this." I don't know about brave. I just needed to stop being a victim of this. I needed to be part of understanding it. It's been 8 months since that night on I-15. I've had 3 more sightings, all brief, all at a distance, all non-threatening. The light follows, then leaves. It watches but doesn't approach. I've learned to live with it. I still teach 4th grade. I still visit Marcus. I still drive through the desert, though I'm always aware, always watching. The mark on my wrist is still there. I've stopped checking it every day. It's just part of me now. I participate in Dr. Lim and Dr. Kwan's research. I give updates, report new experiences, contribute to their database. They tell me they're making progress, building a clearer picture of the phenomenon. I don't know if we'll ever get answers. I don't know if we'll ever understand what's out there in the desert, watching us, following us, leaving marks on our skin. But I know I'm not alone. There are hundreds of us, maybe thousands, people who've had experiences we can't explain, encounters we can't forget. We're not crazy. We're not making it up. We're witnesses to something real, something important, something that demands our attention. If you drive through the Mojave Desert at night, pay attention. Watch the sky. Watch your instruments. If your engine dies for no reason, if your electronics cut out, if time starts to slip, don't panic. Pull over. Stay calm. Wait it out. And if you see a light following you, steady and silent, know that you're not imagining it. Know that others have seen it too. Document what happens. Tell someone you trust. Find others who've been through it. You're not alone. And whatever's out there, watching us from the dark desert sky, It's real, I know. I've seen it. I've felt it, and I carry the mark to prove it. My name is Ruth Salinas, and I've been flying small aircraft for 12 years. I'm a contract pilot based out of Daggett Barstow Airport in the Mojave Desert. Most of my work is atmospheric observation flights for the National Weather Service and private research groups studying desert climate patterns. It's steady work. I fly at night when the air is calm and the thermal readings are clearest. I know the desert sky better than most people know their own neighborhoods. I'm 36 years old. I grew up in Victorville, learned to fly at 24, and I've logged over 3,000 hours in single-engine planes. I'm certified for instrument flight, night operations, and I've never had an accident or incident on my record. Flying is the most important thing in my life. It's methodical, predictable, governed by physics and weather patterns I can read and understand. What happened on the night of October 17th challenged everything I thought I knew about how time works. I was scheduled for a routine atmospheric observation flight. The route was a standard pattern I'd flown dozens of times before. Take off from Daggett Barstow, fly north over the Calico Mountains, then east toward the Nevada border, south along the edge of the Mojave National Preserve, and back west to the airport. Total flight time, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'd be back on the ground by 2:30 a.m. I arrived at the airport around 11:15 p.m. The night was clear and cold, temperature in the low 40s. Perfect flying weather. No wind to speak of. Visibility unlimited. The kind of night where you can see individual stars so clearly they look like pinpricks in black paper. I parked my truck in the small lot near the main hangar and grabbed my flight bag from the passenger seat. The bag contained my headset, knee board with flight charts, backup flashlight, water bottle, and a thermos of coffee. I've learned over the years that night flights require preparation. You can't just walk to a 7-Eleven at 10,000 feet if you forget something. The airport was quiet. Daggett Barstow isn't a busy place, especially at night. We get some general aviation traffic during the day, a few flight schools, some corporate jets occasionally. But after sunset, it's mostly just cargo runs and pilots like me doing contract work. I walked past the main office building. The lights were on inside, but I could see it was empty except for the overnight staff. Through the window of the pilot's lounge, I could see the coffee maker with its glowing orange light, the ancient leather couch that smelled like avgas and old sweat, and the wall covered with sectional charts marked with coffee stains and pencil notes from pilots plotting courses. Wes Larkin was working security that night. Wes is a retired Air Force NCO, mid-50s, with the kind of calm competence that comes from 30 years of military discipline. He manages overnight security for the airport, which mostly means keeping an eye on the hangars and making sure the perimeter fence stays intact. We'd known each other for about 4 years. Good guy, thorough, not the type to exaggerate or imagine things. "Evening, Ruth," he said as I walked past the security office. He was sitting at his desk with a coffee, monitoring the security camera feeds on 3 different screens. I could see the runway on one, the apron on another, and the perimeter fence on the third. "Evening, Wes. Quiet night?" "Always is. You doing the weather run?" "Yeah, should be back around 2:30. I'll keep the lights on for you." He raised his coffee mug in a small salute. "Weather looks good. Clear all the way to Vegas and back." "That's what I'm counting on." I continued to the hangar where my plane was waiting. The hangar door was already open. I'd called ahead and asked the line crew to pull the plane out and do the fueling. They'd left a note on the cockpit door confirming 50 gallons, full tanks, oil checked and topped off. A Cessna 172, tail number N4739F. I'd been flying this particular plane for 2 years. It wasn't mine. I leased it from the airport. But I knew it better than any plane I'd ever flown. I knew the slight pull to the right on takeoff, the way the engine ran a little rough for the first 30 seconds after starting, the squeak in the pilot's seat that happened whenever I made a sharp turn. I did my pre-flight check by flashlight, working through the routine I'd performed hundreds of times before. I walked around the plane clockwise, starting at the pilot's door. Checked the fuel level by opening the tank and visually confirming. Checked the oil by pulling the dipstick, ran my hand along the leading edge of the wing, feeling for any dents or damage. Checked the ailerons, making sure they moved freely. Checked the flaps. Moved to the tail, checked the rudder and elevator. Walked around to the other wing, repeated the checks. The tires were good. The propeller was clean, no nicks. The windscreen was clear. Everything looked normal. I opened the cockpit door and climbed in. The familiar smell hit me immediately, a mix of old leather, aviation fuel, and the faint metallic scent of electronics. I settled into the left seat, adjusted it forward until my feet reached the rudder pedals comfortably, and began the interior check. Seatbelt and shoulder harness checked and secure. Control yoke checked for free and correct movement. Trim wheel set to neutral. Fuel selector set to both tanks. Mixture set to rich. Throttle set to closed. Master switch off. Magnetos off. I pulled out my knee board and reviewed the weather briefing I'd gotten earlier. Winds aloft were light and from the west. Temperature at altitude would be around 35 degrees. No precipitation, no turbulence expected. Perfect conditions. I strapped the knee board to my right thigh and clipped my headset to my belt. Then I reached over and flipped on the master switch. The instrument panel came alive. Lights glowing softly in the darkness. The Garmin GPS unit booted up with a friendly chime. The radio crackled briefly with static before settling into silence. I checked the clock on the instrument panel. 11:43 p.m. I was right on schedule. I climbed into the cockpit, strapped in, and ran through the engine start checklist. Mixture rich. Throttle open 1/4 inch. Fuel pump on. Primer, 3 pumps. Throttle back to idle. Ignition switch to start. The Lycoming engine turned over once, twice, caught, sputtered, and then settled into a steady rumble. I let it warm up while I checked the radio and instruments. Everything showed normal readings. The tachometer showed 1,000 RPM. Oil pressure climbing into the green. Fuel pressure good. Alternator charging. I ran the engine up to 1,500 RPM and checked the magnetos. Both firing cleanly, less than 50 RPM drop when I switched from both to individual. Good compression. I tuned the radio to the common traffic frequency and made my first call. Daggett traffic, Cessna 4739er Foxtrot. Pre-flight checks complete, preparing to taxi. No response. I wasn't expecting one, just following procedure. At 11:47 p.m., I released the parking brake and taxied to the runway. The plane rolled smoothly across the tarmac. I could see Wes in the security office window, watching me pass. He gave me a small wave. I waved back. I reached the runway threshold and ran through my final checks. Engine temps good. Oil pressure good. Fuel good. Flight controls free and correct. Trim set. Flaps set for takeoff. Daggett traffic, Cessna 4739er Foxtrot, departing runway 22, remaining in the pattern briefly before departing to the north. I advanced the throttle smoothly. The engine's rumble deepened to a roar. The plane began to roll, slowly at first, then faster. The centerline lights passed beneath me in increasing rhythm. The airspeed indicator crept upward. 40 knots, 50 knots, 55 knots. At 60 knots, I pulled back gently on the yoke. The nose wheel lifted off the pavement. The plane hung there for a moment, half flying, half rolling. Then the main wheels left the ground, and I was airborne. The sensation never got old. That moment when the wheels break contact with the earth and you're suddenly suspended in 3 dimensions instead of 2. That moment when you become a pilot instead of a person pushing a machine around the ground. I climbed straight ahead to 500 feet, then began a gentle left turn to the north. Below me, the airport lights grew smaller. The desert spread out in all directions, dark and vast. Above me, the stars were beginning to show clearly now that I was away from the airport lights. I leveled off at 8,500 feet and settled into the cruise. The engine hummed steadily. The GPS showed my ground speed at 105 knots. The autopilot wasn't working. It had been broken for 3 weeks and the repair was scheduled for next month. So I hand flew the entire route, which I actually preferred. It kept me engaged, kept me feeling the airplane. At 12:15 a.m., I was crossing over the Calico Mountains. I could see the faint outline of the peaks below, dark shapes against slightly less dark ground. The atmospheric sensors were recording data automatically. Temperature at this altitude, 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressure, 29.87 inches. Humidity, 12%. Dry and cold and clear. Perfect conditions for stargazing. I looked up through the cockpit window and saw the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light. I'd been flying long enough that I could navigate by stars if I needed to. There was Polaris, the North Star, exactly where it should be. There was the Big Dipper, pointer stars aimed at Polaris. There was Orion rising in the east, distinctive and bright. I checked my position on the GPS, right on course. I'd be turning east in about 8 minutes. That's when the first strange thing happened. My compass started drifting. Not spinning wildly, just drifting slowly to the right. I was flying on a heading of 180 degrees south, but the compass was gradually sliding toward 185, then 190. I tapped the glass. Sometimes compasses stick, but tapping didn't help. It kept drifting. I checked my GPS. It showed my position clearly, and my ground track was still straight south. So the plane wasn't actually turning. Just the compass was acting up. Odd, but not alarming. Compasses can be affected by magnetic anomalies, especially over desert terrain with unusual mineral deposits. I made a mental note to have it checked when I landed. Then the radio started crackling. I was monitoring the regional air traffic frequency, even though there was no other traffic out there that night. The frequency had been silent since takeoff. Now it was producing bursts of static, random pops and hisses, like something was interfering with the signal. I keyed the mic. Daggett traffic, November 4739er Foxtrot, 40 miles northeast, checking radio. Static. No response. I tried again. Same result. I switched to the emergency frequency. More static. My skin prickled. I told myself it was probably just atmospheric interference. The desert can do strange things to radio signals at night, but it felt wrong. I checked the other instruments. Altimeter, airspeed, vertical speed, all normal. Engine instruments, all normal. The plane was flying fine. I looked out at the sky around me, stars in every direction. Nothing unusual. Then I saw the light. It appeared off my left wing, maybe 2 miles out, at my altitude. A single point of white light, brighter than any star, perfectly still against the moving star field. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds. It didn't move, didn't blink, just hung there, bright and motionless. I turned my head to check my instruments, and when I looked back, the light had moved. It was now directly ahead of me, still at my altitude, maybe a mile away. It had relocated without appearing to travel the distance between. One moment on my left, the next moment ahead. My pulse quickened. I keyed the mic again. Daggett traffic, November 4739er Foxtrot. I have an unidentified light at my altitude, directly ahead. Anyone else in the area? Static. The light started moving. Not like an aircraft banking or turning. It slid laterally to the right, smooth and fast, covering a mile in what felt like 2 seconds. Then it stopped. Then it moved again, this time upward, climbing 1,000 feet in an instant. I gripped the yoke tighter. My training kicked in. Aviate, navigate, communicate. I kept the plane straight and level. I checked my position on the GPS. I tried the radio again. Nothing but static. The light descended, dropping back to my altitude. It was now positioned directly in front of me, maybe half a mile out, close enough that I could see it wasn't a single point anymore. It was a sphere, glowing white, with a defined edge. I made a decision. I turned the plane. I banked left, away from the light, and rolled out on a westerly heading. Back toward the airport. This flight was over. The sphere matched my turn. It stayed directly ahead of me, maintaining the same distance. I tried a different heading, north. The sphere adjusted, staying in front. My hands were sweating inside my gloves. I descended, dropping from 8,500 feet to 7,000 feet. The sphere descended with me, maintaining relative position. It was following me, or leading me, or something. I checked my clock, 1:09 a.m. I'd been watching the sphere for about 17 minutes, though it felt like less. Then the sphere did something I'll never forget. It split into 3. No transition, no separation process. One moment it was a single sphere. The next moment it was 3 identical spheres, arranged in a perfect triangle. Each one glowing the same steady white. They held formation for maybe 10 seconds. Then they began to pulse. All 3, synchronized. Bright, dim, bright, dim. A slow rhythm, like a heartbeat. And then I felt it, a vibration. Not through the airframe, not a sound. A vibration that came from inside my chest, like my ribs were resonating with some low frequency I couldn't hear. The instruments started going haywire. The altimeter spun. The airspeed indicator dropped to 0, then jumped to 200 knots, then back to 0. The compass was spinning freely. The GPS screen flickered and went dark. But the plane itself was fine. I could feel it through the controls. The engine was running smooth. The wings were level. I was still flying. I focused on my senses. I could feel the pressure of my weight in the seat. I could see the horizon line between the dark desert and the star-filled sky. I could hear the steady drone of the engine. I flew by feel. I kept the wings level using the horizon. I kept the nose up using the pressure on the yoke. I ignored the instruments. The 3 spheres pulsed faster. The vibration in my chest grew stronger. And then, everything went white. Not a flash. Not an explosion of light. Just a smooth transition from darkness to white. Like someone had turned on a dimmer switch and slowly brought the brightness up to maximum. I couldn't see the desert below. Couldn't see the stars above. Couldn't see the instrument panel in front of me. Just white. Pure, even, sourceless white. I could still feel the plane, the yoke in my hands, the rudder pedals under my feet, the seat beneath me. But I couldn't see any of it. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds? Minutes? I had no sense of time passing, and then it faded. The white receded like a curtain pulling back, and I could see again. The desert below. The stars above. The instrument panel in front of me. Instruments still spinning and flickering. The 3 spheres were gone. I checked my position on the GPS. It had come back online. I was 15 miles northwest of Barstow, heading west. I didn't remember turning west. The last heading I remembered setting was north. I checked the clock on the instrument panel, 2:09 a.m. I felt cold. My hands were shaking. I set a course for Daggett Barstow and started my descent. I tried the radio. Daggett traffic. November 4739er Foxtrot, inbound from the northeast, 15 miles out. Static. I tried again. Still static. I didn't care. I was going to land whether the radio worked or not. At 5 miles out, I could see the airport lights. The runway lights glowed steady in the darkness. I'd never been so happy to see them. I entered the pattern, ran through my landing checklist by memory, since half the instruments were still acting erratically, and brought the plane down. The wheels touched the runway at 2:14 a.m., according to the clock on the terminal building, which I could see lit up as I taxied past it. I rolled to a stop in front of the hangar, shut down the engine, and sat in the cockpit for a long moment. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Wes came out of the security office as I was tying down the plane. "You okay, Ruth? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing even to me. Rough flight. Weather looked clear all night. It was, just something weird happened up there. He looked at me carefully. "You want to talk about it?" "Not yet. I need to think." He nodded. "I'll be in the office if you change your mind." I finished securing the plane and walked to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone to check the time. 2:09 a.m. I stared at it. That couldn't be right. The terminal clock had said 2:14 when I landed. I'd been on the ground for at least 5 minutes since then. I got out of the truck and walked back to where I could see the terminal clock. 2:15 a.m. I looked at my phone again. 2:09 a.m. The seconds weren't ticking. The time on my phone was frozen at 2:09 and 43 seconds. I held the power button and restarted the phone. When it came back on, the time updated. 2:16 a.m. I stood there in the cold desert night, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My phone had been stuck. Frozen at 2:09. The exact time the GPS had shown when the white light faded and I could see again. I walked back to the security office. Wes was at his desk reviewing the camera feeds. "Wes," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What time did I land?" He checked his watch. "About 10 minutes ago, so 2:14, maybe 2:15. "Did you see me come in on the cameras?" "Yeah. I watched you on final approach. Why?" "Can you show me?" He looked puzzled, but pulled up the recording. He scrolled back to 2:10 a.m. and hit play. The camera showed the runway, empty and dark. Then, at 2:13 a.m., according to the timestamp, my plane appeared on final approach, landed, and taxied to the hangar. "That's you," Wes said. "Rewind it," I said. "Go back further." He rewound to 2:00 a.m. and played it forward. At 2:09 a.m., my plane appeared on the screen. I was landing. Coming in on final approach, wheels touching down, exactly like the later footage, but this time my landing lights were on. In the 2:13 footage, my landing lights had been off. "Wait," Wes said. "What the hell?" He rewound and played it again. At 2:09, my plane landed with lights on. At 2:13, my plane landed again with lights off. 2 landings, 4 minutes apart. Same plane, same approach, different lighting configuration. "That's impossible," Wes said quietly. "I know." "Did you do a go-around? Did you abort the first landing and circle back?" "No, I landed once, at 2:14. I was only in the pattern once." He stared at the screen. "Then what am I looking at?" "I don't know." We watched both clips several times. There was no doubt. The plane appeared twice, landing twice in the same way, 4 minutes apart. In the first clip, at 2:09, the runway was dark except for the runway lights and my landing lights. In the second clip, at 2:13, the runway was brighter. Not from my lights, which were off. The whole area looked brighter. like there was an additional light source somewhere off camera. "Ruth," Wes said carefully, "what happened up there tonight?" I told him. The compass drift, the radio static, the sphere of light, the three spheres pulsing, the instruments failing, the white light, and waking up 15 miles from where I'd last remembered being, with my clock showing 2:09. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his face. "I've heard stories," he said, "from other pilots, military guys I served with. They talked about lights that followed them, instruments going crazy, lost time. I never knew whether to believe them. Do you believe me?" He looked at the monitor showing 2 landings of the same plane. "Yeah, I believe you." I didn't sleep that night. I drove home as the sun was rising, my mind replaying everything over and over. The sphere splitting into 3. The white light. The frozen clock. The double landing. I lived in a small apartment in Victorville, about 20 minutes from the airport. When I got home, I didn't bother trying to sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and wrote down everything I could remember. Every detail. The time the compass started drifting, the exact position of the sphere when it first appeared, the sensation of the vibration in my chest, the color of the white light, not bright white like a camera flash, but softer, almost warm. I filled 6 pages with notes. Then I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the sun climb over the desert hills, trying to process what had happened. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was my supervisor at the weather service. "Ruth, I got your data upload from last night, but there's something strange." "What's that?" "The timestamps don't match the flight duration. According to the data, you were airborne for 2 hours and 15 minutes, but the recording shows data for only 1 hour and 58 minutes. There's a 17-minute gap with no readings." I felt my stomach tighten. "What time does the gap occur?" "Starting at 12:52 a.m., the data just stops. Then it picks up again at 1:09. The exact window when I'd encountered the spheres and the white light. "I had some instrument issues," I said carefully. "Electrical problems. I'm getting the plane checked out today." "Okay, as long as everything's safe. The data we got is good quality, so we're fine for this run, but let me know what the mechanic says." "Will do." I hung up and stared at my notes. 17 minutes of missing data. 17 minutes when my instruments had failed and I'd been surrounded by white light. Except it hadn't felt like 17 minutes, it had felt like maybe 30 seconds at most. I called in sick to work the next day. I couldn't face getting in a plane, not yet. Around noon, Wes called me. "I've been reviewing the overnight footage," he said. "All the cameras. You need to see this." I drove back to the airport. Wes had his office set up with multiple screens showing different camera angles from around the airport. "Watch this," he said, pulling up footage from the perimeter camera that covered the approach path. At 2:09 a.m., my plane appeared in the sky, descending toward the runway. But before it reached the runway, there was something else in the frame. A light, high above the airport. A sphere of white light, almost exactly like what I'd seen during the flight. It appeared at 2:08 a.m. and hovered motionless for about 90 seconds. During that time, my plane appeared beneath it, coming in for landing. The sphere stayed above and behind my plane, following my approach. As my plane touched down in the first landing, the sphere brightened intensely for about 3 seconds. The camera's auto exposure struggled, dimming the whole image to compensate for the brightness. Then the sphere vanished. And at 2:13 a.m., my plane appeared again, landing for the second time. But this time there was no sphere visible. "It was here," Wes said. "Whatever you saw up there followed you down." "Why don't I remember landing twice?" "I don't know. But look at this." He pulled up another angle, this one from inside the hangar looking out toward the apron. At 2:09, my plane touched down and began to taxi. But as it turned off the runway, the image flickered, just for a fraction of a second. And when the flicker cleared, the plane was gone. At 2:13, my plane appeared again, taxiing normally from the runway to the hangar. In the first landing, Wes said, you disappeared. The plane was there, then it wasn't. Then 4 minutes later, you appeared again and landed normally. What does that mean? I think, he hesitated. I think time split somehow. There are two versions of your landing on these cameras, 4 minutes apart. In one version, something happened that made you vanish. In the other version, you completed the landing normally. That's insane. I know, but I'm looking at the footage. It's right here. I watched the clips again and again. He was right. The evidence was clear. 2 landings, a sphere of light, a flicker and disappearance, then a reappearance and normal conclusion. We spent the next hour going through every camera angle, every frame. The pattern held. At 2:09, I landed with lights on, the sphere present, and then vanished during taxi. At 2:13, I landed again with lights off, no sphere visible, and taxied normally to the hangar. We need to report this, I said. To who? The FAA. What are we going to say? That you landed twice and time got weird? He had a point. What about the military? I suggested. Edwards Air Force Base is close. They track airspace. They might have seen something. Wes looked uncomfortable. I can make some calls. Old contacts. But Ruth, if you report this officially, you're going to get flagged. Pilots who report seeing UFOs, they get grounded. Psych evaluations. Their careers get damaged. I know. But this happened. It's real. These cameras show it's real. The cameras show something. Whether anyone will believe what they show is another question. He was right, and I knew it. But I couldn't just pretend this hadn't happened. Let me think about it, I said. Can you make copies of this footage? Multiple copies. Already done. I've got 3 backup drives. One for me, one for you, one stored off-site. Thank you, Wes. Ruth, I believe you. I'm seeing the same things you're seeing. We're in this together now. I spent the next 3 days researching. I found online forums where pilots discussed unusual encounters, stories similar to mine, lights following aircraft, instruments failing, time discrepancies. One story caught my attention. A charter pilot flying out of Las Vegas reported seeing 3 spheres in formation while flying over the desert in 2019. His GPS showed him in 2 different locations simultaneously. When he landed, his flight log showed a duration that didn't match the actual time that had passed. He reported it to the FAA. They investigated, found no evidence of malfunction, and suggested he take time off for stress-related reasons. He never flew commercially again. Another pilot, a woman who flew fire patrol in Northern California, described a white light that engulfed her plane during a night flight. She lost 20 minutes. Her plane's clock, her watch, and her phone all showed different times when she landed. She told her employer. They quietly retired her on medical grounds. The pattern was clear. Report it, get sidelined, stay quiet, carry it alone. But then I found something different. A private message board for pilots who'd had encounters and wanted to share information without risking their careers. It was invitation only, carefully moderated, completely anonymous. I requested access and was vetted by a moderator who asked me detailed questions about my experience. 2 days later, I was admitted. The board had over 200 members. Pilots from all over the country. Commercial, private, military, retired. all with stories of encounters they couldn't explain. I posted my story, including the details about the double landing on camera. Within hours, I had responses. A former Navy pilot told me about an encounter he'd had in 2003 over the Pacific. His jet's instruments had failed. He'd lost radio contact, and when he regained control, he found himself 50 miles from where he'd been, with no memory of flying that distance. A cargo pilot described landing at a small airport in Nevada and finding, when he checked security footage the next day, that his plane had appeared on the runway before he'd even radioed his approach. Like the footage had recorded him landing before he actually landed. A woman who flew medical transport told me about a night flight where she'd seen her own plane from the outside flying beside her. A perfect duplicate, lights and all, maintaining formation for nearly a minute before vanishing. Time anomalies, spatial displacements, duplications. The reports were consistent and disturbing, and many of them occurred over the desert southwest, over the same areas I flew. One pilot, using the handle Desert Rat 7, sent me a private message. I fly out of Barstow too, same routes you do. I've had 3 encounters in the past 2 years. We should talk. I agreed to meet him. We set a time and place, a diner in Hesperia, neutral ground, public but quiet. His real name was Marcus Delgado. He was in his early 40s, a former Air Force transport pilot who now did contract work like I did. We sat in a corner booth with coffee and talked for 3 hours. The first time it happened, he said, I thought I was losing my mind. I was flying a standard route, night observation like you do. I saw a light following me. Single sphere, white, exactly like you described. It paced me for about 10 minutes, then it did something I'll never forget. It moved ahead of me, stopped, and then I flew through it. Through it. Through it. Like flying through a cloud, except there was no cloud. Just this envelope of white light. And when I came out the other side, my GPS said I was 15 miles south of where I'd been. But I hadn't turned. I hadn't changed course. The landscape below didn't match my flight path. Did you report it? Hell no. I'd seen what happened to pilots who reported this stuff, but I started documenting. Every flight, I carry multiple recording devices now. Cameras, voice recorders, backup GPS units, and I've captured some incredible footage. Can I see it? He pulled out a tablet and showed me. Video of a sphere pacing his plane. Audio of his instruments going haywire. GPS tracks showing impossible jumps in position. This is exactly what happened to me, I said. I know. That's why I wanted to meet you. Because I think there's a pattern. These encounters are concentrated in specific areas, specific flight paths, and I think if we map them, we might understand what's happening. He pulled up a map on his tablet. It showed the Mojave Desert with dozens of red pins marking locations. These are documented encounters from the past 5 years, he said. Just the ones I know about from pilots I trust. Look at the concentration. The pins clustered in specific areas, near Barstow, near Edwards Air Force Base, along the route to Death Valley, in the airspace over the Mojave National Preserve. It's not random, he said. Whatever these things are, they favor certain locations, and those locations correspond to areas with unusual geological features. Fault lines, magnetic anomalies, underground mineral deposits. Why would that matter? I don't know, but it's a data point, and data is what we need. He told me about other pilots in the network. A woman in Arizona who'd had similar experiences. A man in New Mexico who'd been documenting encounters for a decade. A retired military pilot in Nevada who claimed to have physical evidence. Samples of material left behind after an encounter. There's a whole community of us, Marcus said. We share information. We compare notes. We try to piece together what's happening, because the official channels aren't interested, or they are interested but they're not sharing what they know. Have you tried contacting researchers, scientists? A few. Most won't touch it. Too controversial, too risky for their careers. But there are some exceptions. Independent researchers, private groups. I can connect you with one if you're interested. I am. On the fourth day, Wes called me again. I talked to a guy I know. Retired Air Force intelligence. He works as a civilian contractor now, doing aerospace research. He's interested in talking to you. No official channels, just a conversation. What's his name? Garrett Mills. He's based in Palmdale. He said he can meet tomorrow if you're willing. I agreed. I met Garrett Mills at a coffee shop in Palmdale. He was in his early 60s, lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of focused attention that made you feel like he was cataloging every detail. We sat in a corner booth. He didn't waste time on small talk. Wes told me what happened, he said. The spheres, the white light, the time anomaly, the camera footage. I'd like to hear it directly from you. I told him everything. He took notes in a small leather notebook, asking occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, he sat back and studied me for a moment. Do you know how many reports like yours I've reviewed over the past 30 years? He asked. No, hundreds. Maybe over 1,000. Most of them are vague. Lights in the sky, strange readings, things that could be explained a dozen different ways. But a small percentage, maybe 5%, are like yours. Detailed, corroborated by instrumentation or other witnesses, and involving specific time distortions. What do you think they are? I don't know, but I can tell you what they're not. They're not conventional aircraft, they're not weather phenomena, they're not instrument malfunctions. Whatever they are, they're real, they're intelligently controlled, and they have an effect on time itself. That's impossible. Not impossible, just beyond our current understanding of physics. Time isn't as fixed as we think it is. Einstein proved that. Time dilates with gravity and velocity. What you experienced might be an extreme example of time dilation, or it might be something else entirely. Why would something do that? Why mess with time around my plane? Good question. One theory is that whatever these things are, they exist in a different temporal frame than we do. When they interact with our reality, time distorts. Like dropping a stone into water. The ripples spread out from the point of impact. So I was the water. In a sense, yes. You were in the wrong place when something from a different temporal state passed through. That doesn't make me feel better. He smiled thinly. It shouldn't, but it might help you understand that you're not crazy. This is real, and you're not the first person it's happened to. What should I do? Keep flying if you want to, or don't if you don't feel safe. But don't report it through official channels. You'll be flagged, grounded, and your story will disappear into a classified file somewhere. If you want to document it, keep your own records. Write down everything. Save the camera footage if you can. And if it happens again, try to gather as much data as possible. You think it could happen again? It might. These encounters sometimes repeat. Not always with the same person, but in the same areas. The Mojave is a hotspot, has been for decades. Why? Another good question I can't answer. Maybe something about the geology. Maybe something about the airspace. Or maybe whatever these things are just like the desert. He finished his coffee and stood. Ruth, I'm going to give you my contact information. If anything else happens, call me. Day or night, I might be able to help. He handed me a business card with a phone number and an email address. No company name, no title. Just a number. Thank you, I said. One more thing, he said. The camera footage Wes has, make a copy. multiple copies. Store them in different places. Files like that have a way of disappearing. I took his advice. Wes and I copied the footage to 3 different hard drives. I kept one, he kept one, and I sent one to a friend in Arizona who didn't ask questions. Then I had to make a decision. Did I keep flying? Flying was my life. It was what I did, what I was good at, but the thought of going back up into that sky, into the space where time could fracture and white light could erase reality, made my hands shake. I took 2 weeks off. I told my clients I was dealing with a family emergency. They were understanding. During those 2 weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about what Garrett had said, that the Mojave was a hotspot, that encounters sometimes repeated. I started researching the history of sightings in the area. I found reports going back to the 1950s. Military pilots seeing formations of lights over Edwards Air Force Base. Civilian pilots reporting radio failures and instrument malfunctions near Barstow. A commercial flight in 1987 that experienced a time jump while passing over the Mojave, arriving at its destination 11 minutes early despite flying at normal speed. The pattern was undeniable. Something about this desert attracted these phenomena. Or maybe the phenomena had always been here, and we were just passing through their territory. On the 15th day, I drove back to the airport. I walked out to my plane, ran my hand along the fuselage, and made my decision. I was going to fly again. But this time, I was going to be prepared. I spent the next week installing additional equipment in my plane. A backup GPS unit. A second clock synced to atomic time. A small video camera mounted on the instrument panel to record the cockpit and the view through the windscreen, and a voice recorder to document everything I said during flights. If something happened again, I wanted evidence. Clear, undeniable evidence. Wes helped me set it all up. He also gave me a handheld aviation radio as a backup to the plane's installed radio, and he made me promise to check in with him before and after every flight. "If you don't call me within 30 minutes of your scheduled landing time," he said, "I'm alerting everyone. FAA, Air Force, sheriffs, everyone." Agreed. I also started carrying a detailed flight log. Not just the standard entries, takeoff time, landing time, fuel consumed. I logged everything. Weather conditions, instrument readings, notable observations, any anomalies, no matter how small. Marcus Delgado had given me the same advice. Document everything, he'd said. Build a case, because if you ever decide to go public with this, you'll need ironclad evidence. On November 3rd, I took my first flight since the incident. A short daytime flight, just a local area check. Nothing over the deep desert. I stayed within sight of the airport. Everything was normal. The equipment worked fine. The sky was clear and empty. I landed without incident. But I noticed something. As I taxied back to the hangar, I felt anxious. Not the good kind of nervousness that comes with flying. The bad kind. The kind that made my hands sweat and my heart race. I'd been flying for 12 years without fear. Now, suddenly, I was afraid. I flew 3 more short flights over the next week. All normal. But the anxiety persisted. I started questioning whether I could keep doing this. Whether I wanted to keep doing this. Garrett Mills called me on November 10th. "I've been analyzing the footage you sent me," he said. "The double landing. I've shown it to 3 different video analysts. They all agree it's authentic. No editing, no manipulation. The camera recorded 2 separate landing events, 4 minutes apart." So, what does that mean? It means what happened to you wasn't a hallucination or a false memory. The camera captured objective reality. You landed twice. Or more accurately, there were 2 timelines where you landed, and the camera somehow recorded both. How is that possible? There are theories in physics. Quantum mechanics suggests multiple timelines could exist simultaneously. What you experienced might be evidence of those timelines momentarily converging or becoming visible to each other. That sounds insane. It does. But the evidence is right here. Ruth, I want to set up an experiment. I want you to fly the same route again, same time of night with enhanced monitoring. I'll position ground-based observers at key points along your route. We'll have radio communication, visual confirmation, everything synchronized to atomic clocks. If something happens again, we'll document it from multiple perspectives. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to walk away from all of this and never fly over that desert again. But another part of me, the part that had spent 12 years seeking answers in data and empirical observation, wanted to know. Okay, I said, let's do it. On November 12th, I was scheduled for another night atmospheric observation flight. Same route as before. North over the Calico Mountains, east toward Nevada, south along the preserve, west back to the airport. Garrett had positioned 3 observers on the ground, one near Baker, one near the New York mountains, one near Kelso. Each had radio equipment, cameras, and synchronized clocks. Wes was monitoring from the airport. I had all my recording equipment running. I told myself it would be fine. Lightning doesn't strike twice. I was wrong. I took off at 11:52 p.m. The night was clear and cold, almost identical to October 17th. I climbed to my cruising altitude and began the route. Everything was normal for the first 45 minutes. I checked in with Garrett's observers every 10 minutes. The radios worked, the instruments behaved. The sky was full of stars and nothing else. At 12:38 a.m., I was flying east about 35 miles from Barstow. That's when I felt it. The vibration. The same one I'd felt before, low and deep, resonating in my chest. I keyed the voice recorder. 12:38 a.m. I'm feeling the vibration, same as last time, checking instruments. The compass started drifting. The GPS flickered once but stayed online. The radios crackled with static. Compass drifting. Radio static. GPS holding. I'm maintaining heading by GPS. I keyed the handheld radio. Ground team, this is Ruth. I'm experiencing the phenomenon. Repeat. Experiencing the phenomenon. Confirm you're receiving. Static. Then Garrett's voice, distant and distorted. We copy, Ruth. We're tracking you. Hold your course. I scanned the sky. At first, I saw nothing. Then, off my right wing, a light appeared. A single sphere. White. Bright. Perfectly still against the stars. Contact. Single sphere, right wing, approximately 2 miles at my altitude. The sphere moved. It relocated to directly ahead of me. Same distance. Same, impossible instant transition. Sphere has moved to 12 o'clock position. No visible means of propulsion. Repositioned without crossing intervening space. I heard Garrett's voice on the radio, breaking up. Ruth. Confirm. Visual. Sphere. Confirmed. Visual contact with sphere. It's matching my heading. I checked my backup GPS. It showed my position clearly. I checked the backup clock. 12:39 a.m. The sphere split into 3. Triangle formation. They began to pulse in sync. 3 spheres now. Triangle formation. Pulsing in synchronization. I'm experiencing strong vibration in chest. Instruments beginning to fail. The altimeter started spinning. The airspeed indicator jumped erratically. The compass was rotating freely. But I was ready this time. I focused on the backup instruments. The backup GPS stayed stable. The backup clock kept ticking. I kept the plane level by watching the horizon. I maintained my heading by following the GPS course line. The 3 spheres pulsed faster. The vibration grew stronger. I could feel it in my teeth now, in my bones. Vibration intensifying. Spheres pulsing at increased rate. I'm maintaining control using backup systems. And then, just like before, everything went white. But this time, I was ready. I kept my eyes on the backup GPS. I watched the screen as the white light filled the cockpit. The GPS showed me moving. Not forward along my flight path. Sideways, east, fast. The position numbers changed rapidly. I was being displaced, moving east at impossible speed while maintaining altitude. I read the coordinates into the voice recorder watching the GPS screen, my voice surprisingly steady. Position changing rapidly, moving east. Velocity, I can't calculate it, it's too fast. Current coordinates. I read them off as they scrolled. 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles. Then the white light faded. I could see again, the desert below, the stars above. But the landscape was wrong. I was over mountains. Rugged, steep mountains I didn't recognize. According to my GPS, I was 42 miles east of my last position. I'd covered that distance in what the backup clock told me was approximately 90 seconds. 42 miles in 90 seconds. That's over 1,600 miles per hour. Impossible for a Cessna 172 that cruises at 185 knots. The 3 spheres were gone. I checked the backup clock. 12:41 a.m. 2 minutes since the spheres appeared, but I'd traveled 42 miles. 12:41. White light has cleared. I've been displaced 42 miles east of my previous position. Time elapsed appears to be approximately 2 minutes. I'm over unfamiliar terrain, attempting to identify position. I tried the handheld radio. "Ground team, this is Ruth. Do you copy?" Static. Then, faintly, Garrett's voice. "Ruth. We lost tracking. Position. I'm displaced. 42 miles east of last known position. Over the New York mountains. All primary instruments failed. Using backup systems. I'm turning west, returning to base. Copy. Return. Monitor." I checked the GPS coordinates. I was over the New York mountains, near the California-Nevada border. Way off course. Way beyond where I should have been. The radios were still dead, except for occasional bursts from the handheld. Just static otherwise. I turned west, back toward the airport. I was going home. As I turned, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Below me, on the desert floor, there was a perfect circle, maybe half a mile across. The ground inside the circle glowed faintly, a soft blue luminescence that shouldn't exist. I descended for a better look, reading coordinates into the voice recorder. At 6,000 feet, I could see the circle clearly. The blue glow came from the ground itself, not from any external source. It was brightest at the center and faded toward the edges. The glow had a pattern, not random. There were lines within the circle, geometric shapes that intersected at precise angles, like a massive diagram drawn in light on the desert floor. I'm observing a circular luminescent area on the ground, approximately half-mile diameter. Blue glow, source unknown. Geometric patterns visible within the glow. Center coordinates. I read off the GPS coordinates. Descending for closer observation. As I descended to 4,000 feet, the glow began to fade. By the time I reached 3,000 feet, it was gone. The ground looked normal, just dark desert. I climbed back to 6,000 feet. The glow returned, patterns and all. It was only visible from altitude. From the ground, you'd never see it. Glow is altitude dependent, visible at 6,000 feet, not visible below 3,000. Patterns suggest intelligent design. I'm documenting coordinates and heading west. I circled the area once more, filming it with the cockpit camera, noting landmarks and coordinates. Then I turned back toward Daggett Barstow and began the long flight home. During the flight back, I had time to think. The displacement had been real. The GPS proved it. I'd been moved 42 miles in 90 seconds by something that could manipulate my position in space without destroying the aircraft or harming me. And the glowing circle on the ground suggested this wasn't just about observing passing aircraft. There was infrastructure, or markers, or something that existed on the ground in that specific location. I landed at 1:47 a.m., according to my backup clock. The terminal clock showed 1:48 a.m. Close enough. My phone, when I checked it, showed 1:48 a.m. No time discrepancy this time. Everything matched. But I'd still been displaced across 42 miles of desert in 90 seconds. That was real. The GPS log proved it. Wes was waiting outside the hangar. "You okay?" he called out as I shut down the engine. "Yeah, but it happened again." "I know, I saw it on the cameras." Inside the security office, Wes showed me the footage. At 12:38 a.m., a light appeared in the sky on the perimeter camera. Not just one light. 3 lights, in a triangle formation, hovering high above the airport. They stayed there for exactly 2 minutes. Then they shot upward and disappeared. At the same time, on the runway camera, something strange happened. The runway lights flickered. All of them in sequence, like a wave passing through. And for about 5 seconds, the whole runway area glowed with a faint blue light. "Same color as what I saw on the ground," I said. "What did you see on the ground?" I told him about the glowing circle in the desert, about the geometric patterns within it, about how it was only visible from altitude. Wes pulled up a map and I showed him the coordinates. He made a note of them. "We need to check that spot," he said. "In daylight, see if there's anything there." Agreed. I downloaded the footage from my cockpit camera and the voice recorder. Everything was there. My narration, the view of the spheres, the white light, the GPS screen showing the impossible displacement. Garrett called my cell phone at 2:15 a.m. "Ruth, thank God. We lost your position completely for about 2 minutes. 1 second you were on our screens, the next you just vanished. Then you reappeared 40 miles east of where you'd been. What happened?" I told him everything. The displacement, the white light, the glowing circle. He was quiet for a long moment. This is exactly what we needed. Multiple independent observations, synchronized timing, GPS tracks showing the displacement. This is evidence, Ruth. Real evidence. What do we do with it? We analyze it. We document it. And we prepare for the possibility that this phenomenon is more complex than we thought. That circle on the ground, that suggests permanence. A location that's marked or modified somehow. We need to investigate it. The next morning, Wes and I drove out to the coordinates where I'd seen the glowing circle. It took 3 hours to reach the area. The terrain was rough, rocky, accessible only by 4-wheel drive. When we arrived, we found nothing unusual, just desert. Rocks, sand, scrub brush, no scorch marks, no disturbance, no evidence of anything out of the ordinary. But when I pulled out a compass, it spun freely. No magnetic north, just rotation. "The magnetic field is disrupted here," I said. Wes pulled out his phone. "No signal, even though we're on high ground and should have line of sight to cell towers." We walked the area for an hour. The compass remained useless throughout a circular area about half a mile across, exactly the size of the glowing circle I'd seen from the air. We collected soil samples from different points within the circle and from outside it for comparison. We took photos. We marked the location precisely with GPS coordinates from multiple devices. As we were leaving, I noticed something. A set of tire tracks leading into the area. Recent, maybe a few days old. They led to the center of the circle and then stopped. No returning tracks, just tracks going in. "Someone else has been here," I said. Wes examined the tracks. "Four-wheel drive vehicle, heavy, maybe a truck or SUV. But yeah, they came in and didn't leave, at least not the same way." We followed the tracks on foot. They led to a flat area near the center of the circle. The tracks ended at a patch of ground that looked slightly disturbed, like something had been dragged across it. The soil was darker here, almost scorched looking. No vehicle, no debris, just the tracks leading to nowhere and the disturbed ground. I knelt down and touched the dark soil. It felt different. Not hot, but charged somehow, like it held static electricity. "This is getting stranger," Wes said quietly. We collected samples from the dark patch and marked the exact location. Then we left the area and drove back to Barstow. On the way, I called Garrett Mills and told him about what we'd found. The magnetic disruption, the missing vehicle tracks, the dark soil. "I want to test those samples," he said. "Can you get them to me?" "Yes." "Good, Ruth. You're documenting something important. Keep doing what you're doing. But be careful. If this phenomenon is escalating, there's no telling what might happen next." Over the next 2 months, I flew 8 more observation flights. 3 of them were completely normal. 5 of them involved encounters. The pattern became clear. The spheres appeared when I was flying at night over the deep desert, specifically over areas with high magnetic anomalies. They would observe me for a period, sometimes just watching, sometimes pulsing, sometimes creating the white light and displacing me spatially. Each time, I documented everything. I recorded coordinates, times, instrument readings, visual observations. The backup systems I'd installed proved invaluable. Even when primary instruments failed, I had redundant data. Garrett analyzed the data and confirmed what I suspected. The areas where encounters occurred corresponded to known geomagnetic anomalies. Something about those locations attracted or enabled the phenomena. The soil samples from the glowing circle showed elevated levels of magnetite and unusual crystalline structures that Garrett said he'd never seen in natural desert soil. "It's like the ground has been altered," he told me over the phone. "Restructured at a molecular level by exposure to intense electromagnetic fields. From the spheres. Probably. Whatever they are, they're generating fields powerful enough to rearrange matter. The patterns you saw in the glow, those geometric shapes, might be residual effects of whatever process is happening there." In December, I had 2 encounters in 1 week. Both followed the same pattern. Spheres appear, instruments fail, displacement occurs, glowing circle visible from altitude. The displacements were getting longer. First 42 miles, then 63 miles, then on the second encounter that week, 87 miles. I was being moved across vast distances in seconds. My body should have been torn apart by the acceleration. But I felt nothing. No G-forces, no discomfort. Just the vibration in my chest, and then the white light. On Christmas Eve, I flew a scheduled observation run. I was alone in the sky, the desert below lit faintly by starlight. I thought about my family gathered in Victorville, probably wondering why I was working on Christmas Eve. The truth was, I needed to fly. I needed to understand. The phenomenon had become the center of my life. At 1:15 a.m. on Christmas Day, the spheres appeared again. 3 of them, triangle formation, pulsing in sync. But this time they did something different. They descended. All 3 of them came down to my altitude and surrounded my plane. 1 ahead, 1 behind, 1 above. They held formation with me for 5 minutes, matching my speed and heading exactly. I could see them clearly through the cockpit windows. Perfectly spherical. glowing with internal light. No visible seams, no propulsion system, no sound. I narrated everything into the voice recorder, my voice steady despite my racing heart. 3 spheres in close formation. Distance approximately 50 feet from aircraft. Maintaining perfect position match, no visible means of propulsion, no sound. Internal glow suggests power source within the structures. I tried the radio, dead except for static. I watched the sphere ahead of me. It was close enough that I could see texture on its surface. Not smooth like I'd thought. There were patterns, intricate geometric designs that shifted and flowed like liquid, constantly changing but always maintaining perfect symmetry. The sphere above me lowered slightly, coming alongside my cockpit. I looked up at it through the side window. It was perhaps 30 feet away, close enough that I could see my plane's navigation lights reflecting off its surface. And then I saw something that made me catch my breath. Inside the sphere, shadows. Not solid forms, but movement, like shapes shifting within the glow. I couldn't make out details, but there was definitely something inside. The spheres were occupied. I documented this observation, trying to keep my voice professional. Observing movement within the sphere structure, unable to determine exact nature. Suggests internal components or occupants. For 5 minutes, we flew together. 4 aircraft in perfect formation. Me and my small single-engine plane, and 3 spheres of unknown origin surrounding me. It felt like an inspection, or an escort, or maybe a greeting. Then, without warning, all 3 spheres shot straight up. They climbed at impossible speed, becoming points of light, then stars, then nothing. I was alone in the sky again. But this time, I wasn't displaced. I didn't lose time. They just flew with me and then left. My GPS showed I was exactly where I should be. My clock showed the correct time. Everything was normal, except for what had just happened. I completed the flight and landed at 2:47 a.m. Wes was waiting as always. "They flew with you," he said, showing me the camera footage. I've never seen anything like it. The footage showed the spheres descending, taking formation around my plane, maintaining position for 5 minutes, then departing. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "What do you think they wanted?" I asked. "I don't know, but they had 5 minutes to do whatever they wanted, and they chose to just fly with you. That suggests they're not hostile. Maybe they're curious. Maybe they're studying us the same way we're trying to study them." In January, I had my final encounter. At least, what I hope is my final encounter. I was flying the same route, same conditions. The spheres appeared as expected. But this time, when the white light came, I didn't experience displacement. Instead, I experienced something else. Time slowed down. I could see it happening. The GPS clock ticked slower and slower, 1 second taking 2 seconds, then 3, then 5. The stars outside seemed to crawl across the sky instead of wheeling in their normal arc. I looked at my hands on the yoke. I could see them moving in slow motion, like I was underwater. But my thoughts were normal speed. I could think, observe, process. I just couldn't move at normal speed. The white light intensified, and then I saw something I'll never forget. Through the white light, I saw my plane. From the outside. I was looking at myself, sitting in the cockpit, hands on the yoke, surrounded by white light. But I was also still inside the cockpit, experiencing it from the pilot's seat. 2 perspectives simultaneously, inside and outside. Observer and observed. The experience lasted maybe 10 seconds, though the GPS log would later show it had been 43 seconds of external time. Then it snapped back. I was inside the cockpit only. The white light faded, Time resumed normal speed. The spheres were gone. I checked my position. I hadn't been displaced. I checked my clock. The time matched the terminal clock when I landed. But something had changed. I couldn't quite articulate what it was. It was like I'd been shown something. A glimpse of how the spheres perceived reality. Multiple perspectives, flexible time, non-linear experience. When I landed and reviewed the footage, I saw something extraordinary. During those 43 seconds when I'd experienced time slowing down, the camera had captured 2 images. One was normal. Me in the cockpit, illuminated by white light. The other was impossible. Me in the cockpit, but the image was transparent, like a ghost. And behind the transparent image, I could see the stars through the plane, as if the aircraft had become semi-permeable to light. For 43 seconds, my plane had existed in 2 states simultaneously, solid and transparent, present and not quite present. "This is beyond anything I've seen," Garrett said when I showed him the footage. "You're experiencing quantum states, superposition, being in 2 places or 2 states at once. That's supposed to be impossible at the macro scale, but here it is. It's been 6 months since my first encounter. I'm still flying, I'm still documenting, and I'm still trying to understand. I've connected with other pilots who've had similar experiences. There are more of us than you'd think. We share information quietly, through private channels, building a database of encounters that will never see official recognition. Marcus Delgado has become a close friend. We compare notes after every flight. He's had 3 more encounters since we first met. Same pattern: spheres, displacement, time anomalies. Wes continues to monitor the airport cameras. He's captured dozens of anomalies now: lights in the sky, strange distortions on the runway, objects that appear and disappear without explanation. He's building an archive, storing it on multiple drives in multiple locations. Garrett has assembled a team of researchers who are studying the data we've collected. They're building a picture of something that operates outside our normal understanding of physics. Something that can manipulate time, space, and matter. Something that can make objects exist in multiple states simultaneously. We've identified 12 locations in the Mojave Desert where the glowing circles appear. All of them correspond to areas of magnetic anomaly. All of them are accessible only by rough terrain. And all of them show the same evidence: altered soil, missing time for visitors, vehicle tracks that lead in but don't lead out. We don't know what the circles are. Markers? Landing sites? Dimensional apertures? The evidence suggests they're permanent installations, but we can't determine who created them or why. The spheres themselves remain a mystery. They appear to be intelligently controlled. They respond to the presence of aircraft. They can displace objects across vast distances without apparent acceleration. They can slow time or fracture it into multiple streams. And they're occupied. I saw shadows moving inside them. Other pilots have reported the same thing. We're not dealing with drones or probes. We're dealing with craft that contain something. I don't know what the spheres are. I don't know where they come from or what they want, but I know they're real. I know they're here in the desert sky, watching and interacting with us. And I know that time isn't as solid as we think it is. I've experienced it fracture. I've watched myself land twice, 4 minutes apart. I've been displaced 87 miles in less than a minute. I've seen my own plane from outside while simultaneously being inside it. I've watched time slow down while my thoughts continued at normal speed. The Mojave Desert holds secrets. Secrets that manifest in white light and synchronized pulses. Secrets that leave traces in the soil and distortions in time itself. Secrets that involve beings or intelligences that understand physics in ways we don't. I'm a pilot. I fly through those secrets several times a month, and each time I learn a little more about just how strange our reality can be. But there's something else I've learned, something important. These encounters aren't random. They're not accidents. The spheres choose when to appear and who to interact with. They could have destroyed my plane dozens of times. They could have displaced me into a mountain or dropped me into the Pacific Ocean. But they haven't. They've been careful, almost gentle. They surround my plane and fly in formation. They displace me, but always to safe locations. They slow time, but never enough to cause harm. It's like they're teaching me, showing me what's possible, demonstrating that reality is more flexible than we believe. And maybe that's the point. Maybe these encounters aren't threats. Maybe they're lessons. If you fly at night over the desert, pay attention to your instruments. Watch for lights that move in ways nothing human-made can move. And if time starts to slip, if you find yourself somewhere you shouldn't be, don't panic. Document it. Remember it. Tell someone you trust. Because you're not imagining it. It's real. I know. I've been there. And I carry the proof in my flight logs, my camera footage, my GPS tracks showing impossible displacements, and my memories of white light that erased the world and brought me back changed. The spheres are still out there. They're watching. They're waiting. And they're teaching those of us willing to learn. I landed twice on the same runway, 4 minutes apart. I've seen myself from outside myself. I've traveled 87 miles in under a minute, and I'm still trying to understand what it means. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm curious, I'm documenting, I'm learning. Because the sky over the Mojave Desert holds answers, and I'm going to keep flying until I find them.